here to hear you and to respond to your concerns, to answer your questions. I am Roy Morris, Director of Citizens Engagement and Media Relations in the Prime Minister's Office, and my role is to help to moderate tonight as well as to ensure that there is follow-up and action on anything that you bring to the attention of this panel. So without further ado, please remember the modus operandi for tonight. If you want to speak, if you intend to speak, you go to the table at the back of the room, give your information to Alex or Darren. They will give you a number and you come back and take one of these seats in front of me. 13 seats. The order in which your numbers appear, 1, then 2, then 3, you go to the mic, and from the mic you can take any seat in the hall and leave the seats in the middle for those who will speak next. And with that, I will turn you over to the Prime Minister, who will get things going. Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. I think you have the order wrong. The Member of Parliament whose constituency we are in will welcome us. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to St. Peter. I'm just adding my voice of welcome to that of the Chair. I don't think this is an attempt to stop me from speaking. We're happy to see all of you, and I'm happy that you have taken the opportunity to attend and share your concerns, many of which you would have already shared with me. But I'm happy that you are able now to share them in a forum led by the Prime Minister, but including many persons from the relevant ministries so that answers could be had to the questions and queries that you will raise. We're happy that Prime Minister has implemented these kinds of engagements. We believe they're important and we support it and wish to have a fruitful discussion this evening, but beyond this evening, to realize solutions and actions that will alleviate the challenges that we have in different areas. So thank you very much. Welcome again, and I turn over to Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Colin. Good evening and welcome to everyone. And I want to apologize for the slight late start. There were some other things that we're trying to get out of the way. But as Roy said, this is bringing us, I believe, to 10 months of Parish Speaks, and in fact 11. The only one after this is St. Thomas. So that this is really the penultimate in this first round. Having said that, I would remember that yours was the last of the town hall meetings in the week gathering session. And therefore, we would have had an opportunity to have broader developmental issues for the parish of St. Peter and for the town of Speightstown addressed, as opposed to the individual concerns that may come up in this meeting. On that occasion as well, we would not have had the wider remit, the wider public service complement of persons here to also complement any questions you may ask that may require technical responses. Welcome to the Attorney General. And basically, therefore, we believe that this is a critical part of allowing government to stay in contact with people's concerns and to be able to see how best we can respond or prioritize where possible and explain where not possible. Because it would be foolhardy of me to tell you that everything that is raised can be dealt with, but everything that is raised must be considered and reasons and explanations given where we can't move for whatever reason at the particular point. So with that, I'd like to invite the first persons. I take it that this line down the middle We get improvements with every session, so thank you. And I believe that we have a slight delay as well. And I'd like to be able to invite those persons then who are here in the order to address the gathering. Thank you. Those in the back of the room, we don't ask you to come forward just for the sake of it. And in fact, one of the things I hope that Barbadians will come to do is to be able to claim their space. It is ironic that this entire front row, with the exception of my personal assistant, is empty. And if I had to tell you of one mission I would like to achieve by 2030, is for Barbadians to come into a room and claim their space. Because when we come into a room and ease in at the back and inch in to the side, then it is as if we feel that we don't belong or that somebody is going to embarrass us. I am here to tell you that not only do you belong, but nobody's going to embarrass you. So the people at the back of the room will pause while the persons go to the mic. For those of you, please to come to the front of the room, because if we're going to have a conversation, and I'm sure that if any of you sat at a head table, you would note that I asked specifically not to put us on a platform, because I want this always to be a conversation. So, who will help in the back? Nick, all of you all, please, in the back. Mr. Carl Boyce and others, come to the front. You belong in the front row, posse, man. Come. All the ones in the back, the front row, please. Intro, come forward, everybody, come forward. Still got some others at the back. Come forward, come forward. And those of you at the side here who waving, all of y'all can come forward too. Come forward. They're more likely to see on camera if you're in the middle. If you're in the front row, then the camera's right here. So you're lucky you can get away from the camera if you're in the front row. Go ahead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Prime Minister and ministers. I'm from Boscobel, St. Peter. Well, I'm going to refer
What's
to
your name, sir?
Wilfred Simmons.
Sorry?
Wilfred Simmons. Yes. Thanks. Can I continue?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about the roads in Boscobel because there are roads that is dangerous. You have people that come through on the pickup trucks. Let's say they're tourists in the pickup trucks. And it's just something that's willing to happen that nobody would like, because the roads are no good. Because they're trying to fix the roads, but I think they're doing more damage to the roads more than anything else. I'm also here to discuss the water. The water in Boscobel is not fit for anyone. You can't even wash clothes with the water, because the water is yellow. Apart from being yellow, it stinks. When you turn your tap on, you can't take the smell. Another thing I would like to talk about, if you all would excuse me, yesterday paper talking about the Trident card. Is there a problem with the Trident cards? Can the Prime Minister address what happened with the carrots, because everybody's getting scared. Everybody feels that they're going to lose their money in the bank. Because that is exactly what is happening. Everybody's getting scared, and everybody's saying they don't need to trade on carrots. So, I'm sorry.
That's all three matters, sir?
That's what I came to talk about.
No problem.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask the Deputy Prime Minister to address the first two, and I don't see Minister Ishmael here, but we will rest assured the answer for the trading card is not going to be to you alone, but it is going to be the whole country. Please carry on.
Thank you. You all take care. That's it.
Thank you, my brother.
Okay.
Good evening to everyone. Sir, I want to start by saying to you that roads and water, I think, are perhaps the most difficult challenges right now that we have in terms of the condition. We have, as you're aware, started the process of mains replacement. There has been some relief in relation to some of the districts across the country, and we are working to try to get the mains replaced so that we can bring relief to a number of persons, particularly in the St. Peter districts. In the interim, we've had to install a number of the community tanks. That is not a feature by any stretch of the imagination that this administration would want to be the order of the day, but we have had to do so in an effort to make sure that there is still clean water for persons to be able to utilize. So we are utilizing a number of the community tanks across the communities, but the main focus of this administration is to try to replace as many of the mains that we can in an effort to be able to bring relief to not just this particular parish, but obviously all of the parishes where we are having some constraints. As it relates to the roads, again, we have not had a lot of the road improvements done for almost a decade prior to us coming to office. I'm sure this evening I will hear every road in St. Peter that requires road works, and perhaps rightly so. And let me just say that it is not lost on MTW in terms of which roads need to be done. One of our challenges has also been that coming to office, obviously we've had to secure financing in order to be able to start to rehabilitate the roads, because roads cannot be rehabilitated or reconstructed if you don't have the money to fix them. The problem is that since the roads had been left to language for so long, we have had to obviously now start to prioritize a number of the roads that have deteriorated over time. And so we are in the process of being able to execute a number of the road rehabilitation programs. You know, when you have 30 seats, it's not as straightforward as when you have 16. So obviously every MP, and Mr. Trudeau can tell you, every MP is requesting across constituencies, and the member for St. Peter is no different. Because he's always bending my ears about which roads in St. Peter require to be done. But we're having to prioritize. We've seen the breakdown of our bridges. We've seen the breakdown of our roads. We've had to start to do a major pothole patching program. We've had to also look at a short roads program or tenantry roads program as well, to be able to ensure that we can keep up with the demands and the pressures that obviously Barbadians are experiencing in relation to the road. So in relation to Boscobel specifically, it is on our priority list. We are working, as you know, through the CAF funding to be able to prioritize roads, and I'm hoping that by the time the next financial year begins on the 1st, that we will get another drawdown of financing that would allow us to start that particular project. Right?
Thank you. One of the things that I'd also like to reinforce with the Deputy Prime Minister, Colin, you all have a new reservoir that's been built by the government up there in Boscobel?
Yes.
Sorry? You want to speak to it, please?
There was a reservoir constructed. There's a reservoir constructed in, I think, 2019 at Boscobel, which replaced the old reservoir, the metal one that was there.
And the metal one, to the best of anyone's knowledge, was there for how long, Mr. Halliday, Mr. Leslie? How long was that there? You may want to come to the mic and just answer, please. Because I know that some people may feel, Mr. Simmons, I hope you're not one that not much happens in Boscobel, when in truth and in fact, when we came to office, the tanks that were there, I was advised would not withstand a category 1 or 2 hurricane. And therefore, as with everything else in life, we had to prioritize where the spend goes. And the first spend was to be able to have the reservoir completed. And the second one relates to us being able to do the pipes across the North St. Lucie and St. Peter, as we indicated. But Mr. Leslie?
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to address you on the matter of the water in the parish of St. Peter. As the Deputy Prime Minister correctly, and the Prime Minister correctly said, the Barbados Water Authority has been having some challenges in the St. Peter, more precisely the Boscobel area. The reservoir that we were speaking of was...
Is it across St. Peter or just Boscobel? Just speak, because others will want
primarily
to know today
Boscobel in
and
St.
just
Peter.
address the issue.
It's primarily Boscobel in St. Peter. But
And where else in St. Peter?
Mount Beverter.
And Six Men's.
Yes, Six Men's, and there was Colleton in St.
Colleton on the border of St. Peter and St. Lucie.
Peter and St. Lucie.
Which is where you're looking to put stuff anyhow.
Right.
So would you like to address all of it one time?
Okay.
Open the baton, sir.
Okay, so the reservoir at Boscobel, that was replaced in around 2019. The reservoir we had there before was the structural integrity of it, as the Prime Minister correctly said, could not withstand a major hurricane, so we had to replace that.
How long was that reservoir there, please? Because we got to give people
that was
context.
there from in the 1970s, the late 1970s.
So just under 50 years.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right. And then what we've been doing systematically and strategically is replacing mains, but we have to obviously be prioritizing the mains replacement effort. So we had a main that was breaking between Lamberts and Boscobel, and we replaced that in 2021. And there are a number of other mains like in Centipede Alley and some of the other areas, Cave Hill, those areas that we have earmarked for replacement. A lot of our mains on the island are aged, and what that means is that they've come to a point now where we have to do a lot of mains replacement, but the mains replacement is so extensive that we have to prioritize them. Here in St. Peter, I don't know if you go from Hayman's down to Farm Road, Two Fridays ago, we had a main that broke there. I think what happened is that the bridge collapsed first and then carried the main with it. But that was not on our priority list. So that now has to be brought up on the priority list, because subsequent to that breakage, over the last week or so, we had 4 or 5 breaks on that main. I think what happened is sudden impact of the breakage probably caused some additional problems for us there. So what I'm saying is that mains replacement, we have to prioritize, and as situations occur, we have to keep revising those priorities all the time. In the St. Lucie border, St. Peter, in the Colleton area, we're also going to be doing mains replacement down there. We're coming from the Allendale, I don't know if you know where the government industrial school was. We're going from there all the way down to Six Men's. When we have the discolored water problem, as we are having now, and we are doing flushing on that main, what we're finding is that main is dropping into holes. So that main has been prioritized for replacement. In the St. Lucie and St. Peter area as well, we're looking to add additional water to augment the water supplies into the 2 parishes. At Colleton, we are looking to put in a containerized desalination plant there. We have done extensive work already in terms of drilling, what we call the hydrological work. So we've done the drilling, we've done the testing. We recently got back the results of the testing. So now the next stage is to develop the catchment there at Colleton so that we could add additional water into the system. So in the northern parishes, St. Lucie and St. Peter, because they're so closely tied, some of the problems that affect one affect the other in terms of mains replacement and in terms of the need to augment the water supply in the system.
But you can give the assurance that we are treating to St. Lucie and St. Peter mains replacement as well as water augmentation as a priority. The plans that you have for the Hope in St. Lucie and for Colleton, can you speak to them, please?
Okay.
Because you've also had a temporary desal plant that we came in and found that wasn't being used for years too, not true?
Yes.
And you're now trying to get the membranes for that, and you have to deal with the well field for the disposal of the brine, not true?
Yes, yes.
Oh, talk, sir, talk.
At those, at those two, in the St. Lucie area, we're looking, as we said, to augment the water supply. So in addition to the one
So
we're putting
we're looking to increase and make sure we got more water to draw from, correct?
Yes.
Right.
So in terms of, in addition to the water, the adding new water at Colleton, we're also doing that at the Hope. So the same work that we would have done in terms of drilling and the exploration at Colleton, we've also done a lot of that work at the Hope as well. At the Hope, we've completed the exploratory work, we've completed the abstraction wells, we have completed the injection wells, because once you run the water through the desalination plants, you end up with a saltier water than you would have started out with. And we have to dispose of that. And that's going to go in some injection wells at the Hope. We're in the process now of installing the pipelines at the Hope. And once that is completed, then we will be connecting up the plant at the Hope. The plant at the Hope is more advanced than the one at Colleton, but rest assured, both plants will be set up at those two locations to add additional water into the system. So,
what is the rough timeline for the completion of the works both at the Hope and Colleton, please?
At the, roughly speaking, at the Hope, we're looking at possibly like April this year to complete Hope. But the one at Colleton is going to be a bit further because we now are in the process of getting the membranes for that plant. So that's going to be like August
this year?
Yes. Yeah.
And what about the wells that we were looking for water at both Mount Poyer and at Beaubrun, aren't we, through the drill?
Yes.
That broke down?
We are also doing some additional exploration at Mount Poyer and at Bourbon, and this will be primarily for agricultural use. We have a number of farmers who have been allocated plots at Mount Poyer and Broomfield, the Spring Hall area. So what we're doing is assisting the Ministry of Agriculture in terms of exploration in that area because we're all abstracting from the same groundwater aquifer. So we are jointly exploring that whole area to see what resources are available, and then those resources obviously will be added to the system for potable water as well as the agricultural use.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leslie, and I hope that everyone realizes that just as we told the people of St. Joseph, when we told them that the water plans at Vineyard would have led to water coming into St. Joseph, and it took, what, about 18 months, 2 years to do? And now the majority of people in St. Joseph do not have the problems that they had. The reality is that within a year of coming to office, we were told that there were at least 5 to 6 reservoirs that would not withstand Category 1 or Category 2 hurricanes. And if they were taken out, let's deal with the one up by the Deputy Prime Minister in Fort George, that would have affected over 25,000 people. The one at Lodge Hill, top of Cave Hill, that also would have affected almost a similar number of persons. The one in Boscobel would not have affected as many people, but as you well know, you are cut off, and therefore it was absolutely critical that we be able to do that. And I can't remember, Rising Sun is another one. that's being replaced. So when you don't maintain infrastructure for decades, 40, 50, 60 years, at some point you got to pay the price. And regrettably, that was what we inherited and had to literally divert resources in order to be able to do that. We also inherited a situation where we had no generating capacity effectively at any of the pumping stations in the country. I am happy to report, Santia, you will have almost all up by the end of May. And it has taken us long, not because we didn't want to buy or we didn't have it, but you also had to wait on what? Supply. Because of the disruption in global supply, you couldn't get and still can't get things as you want in time, and you have to literally plan for disruptions in terms of the supply in the world in which we live, because many people never, one, traditionally kept large inventory, but it wasn't a problem once there was access. But once COVID shut down the world and shut down supply chains, then all of these things become problematic. And it means now that we have to keep more inventory, which means that you need more working capital to be able to do that which you couldn't do before easily. So, or that which before you could have just relied on a third party supplying you at short notice when you need it. We don't have that luxury anymore, especially on critical supplies that are necessary from a national security perspective, and water is one of those first priorities under national security. Ma'am, I'm told that Minister Ishmael should be here any minute, and as I said, we will address the Trident card separately, but I reject strongly the notion that, and that is going around now, that for the sake of opposition politics, that we have all of these allegations being laid on the internet. The AG just showed me the representation of the People Act, which from the time it was passed in what year? 1980. See which one that one is. I know EBC was in the 80s, but this is decades old. And the notion that because a list was published that there is a problem with people's data is nonsense. That particular piece of legislation was 1990, passed actually by a Democratic Labour Party government, that required publication of registers, and you can't quarrel with them for it, because everybody must know who is on the voters list. The one thing that cannot be private in a country is a voters list. And we have all kinds of commentary taking place that really causes me to wonder if people are pausing and thinking before speaking. Now, with respect to the Trident card, Barbados is not the first country that will have access to a digital card, but I'm going to let Minister Ishmael speak to it, because what is taking place is a lot of fear-mongering, and what we're trying to do is to make sure that we have the systems to protect people. But we live in a world, you come in time, Skipper, we live in a world where there will be vulnerabilities in the digital environment and in the cybersphere. And part of the difficulty that we have is that it is no different from people attacking people physically or robbing. Whatever you can do in person, people will try to do virtually as well. So it is up to us to try to protect as far as possible, in the same way that we try to protect people as far as possible physically.
Hi, thank you very much, PM, and good night to all. Apologies for being late. I actually was rambling trying to get to Alexander. I must admit, I was rambling trying to get here. This is my first time actually on the grounds of Alexandra School, so I'm happy to be here.
Make sure it is not
my
your
first
last,
time in Spikestown.
Make sure it is not your last.
For sure, yeah. Not my first time in Spikestown though, but I had a little rambling episode trying to get into the front entrance. As the Prime Minister, I just heard the tail end of what the Prime Minister was sharing with you. and to reassure the people of Barbados. The government of Barbados is doing all within its power to ensure that this national ID card that we're issuing to you is the safest and best option relative to the authentication of your identity in Barbados. I start with context. We have had, as a civilized society, for many decades, the current blue IDs that all of us have, almost every single person here, I'm sure, with the exception of children who would have a minor ID card, have that blue adult ID card. We know it to be a piece of card with a ping pong stuck on top of it, laminated. We have had that since 1979. The government of Barbados, after hearing so many individual citizens here and abroad make reference to the fact that the card was not very secure, and after countless numbers of citizens having come to the EBC, for example, and indicating that they would have been unfortunate victims of identity theft, because with the old card, with this old card, the current ID card that we have, this laminated blue ID card, that you know, the old one, that you know, phrase at the end, starts to open at the end. Persons for many years would open that, take advantage of how unsafe it was, and they would open it, replace the ping pong. Oh my, Exhibit A. I don't want to show the photograph at the front. I won't show it for the cameras, but if I were to just describe it as peeling at the front and at the back. Here you go, Deputy PM. I will save you the embarrassment. But I'm thankful that we have a new and improved and highly secure Trident ID that you have upgraded to. But that is a perfect example of what the issues with the existing or old ID would have been. It was easy for a person to commit fraud with that, and we said enough is enough. We wanted to upgrade and improve on that and build on it. We didn't just want to replace it, but we said, you know what, as we're going into a new digital frontier, the world is changing around us, and it has already changed, ladies and gentlemen. We must accept the world is already changed around us. It's not changing anymore, it has changed. And a lot of what we're doing now in Barbados is actually trying to catch up with where the rest of the world has been, the rest of the developed world has been. So we said we're going to replace your ID card and make it more secure, yes, but we're going to add to that enhanced digital features and capabilities. So what we've had is this question of what is mandatory versus what is optional. And let me clear that up once and for all. Hopefully, once and for all. But I'll say it again if I have to, no problem. We have the physical ID card, which all of us as citizens of Barbados are entitled to have. When you go into a bank, when you go into a retail outlet in Broad Street or Swan Street, wherever you go in Barbados and they ask you, hi, Mr. Ishmael, give me your ID, please. You present an ID card to them to validate who you are. That's been a part of our DNA as a civilized society for many, many decades. That will be maintained with the new Trident ID card. What we have done is that we have said we are no longer using that old one and we're now going to replace it with this more secure physical one. That is what we are considering to be, as a citizen of Barbados, your right, and a part of what we're saying as a citizen, your new ID will be this new Trident ID card. What is optional to you is the digital component that we are now offering. And the digital component is fully optional to you. There are services that will come on stream, government services, private sector services, government products, private sector products that will become more of and increasingly available to us as citizens of Barbados as time goes on. That will be something that you as an individual citizen can make a choice if you want to opt in to have access to those digital services. And I've often said this. If I'm sitting at home, in my bed, in my boxer, and I want to be able to do business with the government of Barbados, and I want to authenticate that I am David Ishmael authorizing this transaction, I should be able to do that in a 21st century world, a 21st century Barbados. If you don't want to do that, that is totally fine. Any citizen that chooses that, if you still want to go into the bank and stand up and present your physical ID, that is totally fine. We're not forcing anyone to go into the digital side of this at all. But there are many citizens that we know who will love the convenience, who will love the ability, the stress relief of not having to stand up in a line, for example, to renew different things and to be able to access certain government services. So with that being said, there are two components to the ID card. You have the digital one that each of you will have the opportunity to opt into or choose not to opt into. But we are giving you a brand new, better secure, or more secure, I should say, more secure PVC ID cards that will match all that you see in the international community. It has several security features, physical and otherwise technological, and the chip and pin is one of those key security features. And let me just spend a moment on that because that is something that also has been raised. If you want to store information on your card, such as whatever personal information you want to store, there's certain information that's already on it, your address, for example, and other basic information about you. That will be protected by a PIN. And I say PIN because it's a password. It's a 4-digit password, really, 4 numbers that you will choose when you receive your card. That is going to protect the data that is on the chip that is coming with your ID card. No one can access that besides you, the individual, giving them access to it by putting in your PIN. There's nobody who knows what is on that card outside of you and cannot get access to it until you put in your PIN. So it is secured with the chip and PIN technology that we are all accustomed to because we have debit cards and credit cards. And what amazes me, PM, is that we have people out there fear-mongering and trying to wrestle our people into a state of standing still when the rest of the world is moving forward for something that is as basic and as fundamental to our society as your ID card. And we need to be able to utilize our ID card to be able to move forward as a society, as a people. And all of us in here go on Amazon. All of us in here go on different Shein and all these different companies overseas. And we put in all sorts of information and we shop and we do these things. You understand? We do all these things and we don't give too much thought to it because we appreciate that the people who operate these companies are going to do so in the most secure way. And we should appreciate that our government is also going to do what is in our best interest. And I can guarantee you that we are doing everything in our best interest as citizens of Barbados. So the chip and PIN technology secures your data, and any data that you're going to put on this card that you will choose to put on this card will be secured by the chip and PIN technology. And just as my final note on this, because I know we have other matters to deal with, is this question of the bank account and how the card is, people can have access to your bank account and track you and different things like that. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no bank account tied to your national ID. There's none right now. And there will not be any that's tied to the national ID at this point in time. Your national ID that's being issued to you, when you go and register, nobody asks you for a bank account. So how is it going to magically get connected to a bank account at some point in time? It can't magically. Anyone who wants to opt into any service later on down the road that may have a feature that is tied to some financial institution or even a government service such as NIS, etc., will opt into it. And when you opt into it, you will provide the relevant information at that point in time. But on the issuance of these ID cards that we are rolling out in full steam, PM, because we have over 177,000 people who have registered for it, close to 180,000 people, over 110,000 have already been delivered. I'm sure many of you, if not most of you, already have your card in hand. So all the fear-mongering that people are trying to throw out there to derail this project and to make it seem as if it is not going to be. So it has had its hiccups, believe you me. But we're at the stage now where cars can be delivered within hours. If you go in today, if you have a certain situation, you go in this morning, you can stand there and get your card within 35 minutes. We're at that stage now. We've worked through all the kinks and we've brought the project to a place now where it is running smoothly. So ladies and gentlemen, I assure you, you can have confidence in your government. We are doing what is in your best interest. The card is safe. Your data is safe. Whatever you put on the data on the card will be safe in the future. I'm not saying it is foolproof. I'm saying it is safe. And we're applying the latest technologies to secure your identity, secure your information, secure your data, so that you don't have to fear. Go forward, get your card, and then make an appeal again. Get your ID cards. Go there and register. For those who have not registered yet, go and register as soon as you can, and you're going to get your card within days. and you're going to be happy when you have your card in your hand. Thank you very much, PN.
Thank you for that comprehensive. Thank you for that comprehensive response, Minister. Let me also just say what he left out was simply to say that there will be some legislative amendments. But secondly, when we came to office, there were cards sitting down in a warehouse. And the cards were in a warehouse for like 3 years or more. And the cards became obsolete. And the $7 million that was spent on the cards went effectively up by mangrove to the dump because the cards were no longer of any valid use for anybody. So that I thank him for his frankness. You know that there have been teething problems. And how many of us do something new without having teething problems along the way? And this was the same way. But we believe that we've worked out most of them. And as he said, this is not mandatory. So those Barbadians who want to use it, what is likely to happen over time, because we already had last month with the digital payments framework being completed by the banks and the credit unions, it is only a matter of time before things which we used to use will become no longer available. How many of us got videotapes at home? I still got some. How many people in here got videotapes at home? Enough. But when last you see a VCR machine selling? You understand? So that nobody said that you have to move from a VCR machine to a DVD player or to digital downloads. But the passage of time and the failure of you to be able to purchase on the market things that you need reinforce that we cannot live in this world without necessarily understanding that if we want to access certain types of equipment, that we are not market makers or market shapers, but regrettably, because of our size and our lack of capacity to have that level of industrialization, we also are simply market takers. And that is exactly what is happening now. We're not at the front line, nor are we at the back in respect of this particular technology. But believe you me, if Barbadians want the ease of convenience and if they want to deal with the international community, you're going to find that there are just certain things that you will have to have access to. And it reminds me, and I end on this point, ma'am, so you can come to the mic. It reminds me that when the United States of America said people can't come in without vaccination, all of a sudden people who didn't want to get vaccinated went and got vaccinated because the only way you could access that country was by showing the vaccination certificate. So the world will set standards, and it is up to us to opt out or to opt in, and your government is giving you that flexibility at the national level as well. Ma'am?
Good night to one and all. Madam Prime Minister, to my representative, Mr. Colin Jordan. I am from the community of Boscobel, and I have two issues.
What's the name?
Harriet Griffith Rolla. Transportation. Now, if I leave Spikestown around 25, just time it a bit, 25 minutes after 8 o'clock, it takes me about to 9:30, 25 to 10 to get home. We have a bus going to Boscobel in their ground, and we have 5 turn-off points. I live between the 5th and the 6th turn-off point. the bus goes from Spikestown into the Wim. That's one turnaround. 2, Mount Beverter, second turnaround. Third turnaround is in Indian Ground. The 4th Indian Ground is at the top of Baltic Hill due to the road works, not going down to Daytree Hill. The 5th turn is at Boscobel, St. Andrew. So when it comes down between the 5th and the 6th, I don't think it is fair, Madam Prime Minister, that after you're working so hard all day, that it takes you an hour and a half from Spikestown to get home. The bus service, my daughter works in town. She finishes work sometimes at 5, 6 o'clock, and sometimes when 11 o'clock she ain't get home yet because there's no bus. And that is what the citizens of Boscobel endure on a daily basis. We can catch the Boscobel Pike Corner bus and get home before the bus from Indian Ground to Boscobel. So I'm asking kindly the representatives from the Transport Board to seriously look into this matter because it's very disturbing. It's disturbing. And I don't think you should go stand so long to get home.
Thank you. I'm being told by the Deputy Prime Minister that Ms. Holder from the Transport Board was on her way, but I think she was stuck in traffic on Highway 2A. But there's a Mr. Denny who's here. Mr. Denny, come forward. Is there anything you can speak to? But what I give you the assurance to, ma'am, is that even if she does not get here, the Deputy Prime Minister will find out what is the problem with respect to the allocation of buses to this part. And furthermore, to recognize that the Transport Authority, I am sure, also has private buses on this route.
No.
And what we discovered, there's no constraint at night, and that's my point. That what we discovered in St. Lucie the other day, last month, was that people have licenses for routes and are choosing when they want to run them. Now, with every burden comes what? With every benefit comes a burden, and with every burden comes a benefit. And it is up now to the Transport Authority to ensure that those persons, and it isn't only St. Lucie, there's some in Christchurch too, that when people have been given licenses, and the license requires you to operate a service for the particular route, then you have a duty to do so unless, for example, you get in an accident or for whatever reason, somebody is sick, and even then, you can always find drivers. So this is a case where clearly the regulation needs to be tightened without prejudice to what the Transport Board itself does with the blue and yellow buses. Correct? Santia and Mr. Denny?
No, just to reinforce what PM has said, I know that we're moving towards trying to have a better flow in terms of fleet management. Obviously, we've increased the capacity of the number of buses. Prime Minister has graciously agreed to give us another 10 buses, which should be here by I think it's the end of April. And then another 21 as well. We are in the process of, the tendering process has started, and we're in the process of getting those as well. And I'm hopeful that by early next year, we should have those. It takes a while to get buses manufactured to be able to meet the specifications for Barbados. So for all those who say, why we don't just buy buses, it is not a straightforward exercise to be able to do so. We have the specs, and therefore we have to go through a process, obviously according to the financial situation. So we are adding to the, or an addition to the existing fleet that we have in the coming months as well. All right.
Good night to everyone. My name is George Denny. I'm the terminal manager at Spikestown Depot. And yes, ma'am, what you say is very true. The amount of turnaround points on that route are 5. And it does take that long to get to Centipede Alley and into those areas. But at this point in time, because of the resources or lack thereof, we really don't want to be doubling buses, but because of the lack of resources, we do have to do that most of the times.
Denny, we are going to review. I am not satisfied that between the number of private buses and the public ones that we have, that what is being done is acceptable. Regrettably, the general manager is not here tonight, but believe you me, I give you the assurance, and this tall gentleman to my left will hold me to account on it, that we will have the transport board review, because one of the benefits of these Parish Speaks meeting is that I hear from you unfiltered. And I've heard loud and clear from the people of St. Lucie and St. Peter that the transport board, as well as the transport authority's regulation of the private buses, needs to be urgently reviewed. And that is what these meetings are for. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. I have
Thank you, Mr. Denny.
One more issue. I want to represent an organization to which I am a part of for the past 29 plus years, and it seems to be neglected. I'm glad that the Attorney General is here. I'm a part of the Island Constabulary, and I am asking you, Madam Prime Minister, along with our Attorney General, that he would give us some assistance and some help. We really need the help. That's all I can say for right now. As Mr. Morris has highlighted, I'm not here to, we just need some help.
No problem, and you'll come quietly and just whisper in the AG in my ear the specifics of what you need, and I appreciate the responsible manner in which you are acting.
Thank you,
The
ma'am.
Lord bless you, and I hope that
Also
the next
blessings
time we
to you.
meet you, that you will be able to report improvements in the bus service
Thank
to
you.
Boscobel.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Madam Prime Minister, members of the head table. My name is Irvin Scantlebury. I'm the president of the Morrisburg Polyclinic Men's Health Group. This group has been in existence for the last 25 years, and the average age of the members is about 55. I've been asked by the membership to raise a concern at this forum, and it relates to user fees for colonoscopy at the QEH. Sometime between July 2022 and January 2023, there was a quantum leap in the increase, there was a quantum leap in the fees at the QEH for a colonoscopy. The fees moved from $263 to $1,350. This certainly is a disincentive. It's prohibitive for most members. So I am awaiting your response so that I can take back some good news to the membership of the Morrisburg Polyclinic Men's Health Group.
I give you the assurance I can investigate it, because I'm certainly not aware of it. And I would like to believe that fees have to be regulated and issued under regulations. So rest assured we will investigate
Well,
it,
I have
sir.
in my possession a
Please.
form from a member who was scheduled to have a colonoscopy at the QEH in May 2023. And there you will see the fee of $1,350 to be paid 1 week before the procedure.
Let me see,
done.
please, because we are still a country governed by law. I see an asterisk there, and I'm looking to see what the asterisk is for. And there's nothing to explain, or fees subject to change. I really don't know who would have done this. So rest assured that we will follow up. AG, can you follow up? Take a picture of it, please. No, it doesn't. Nobody's name is on it. Just take the information, please. We'll follow up, Mr. Scanterbury. If you give Mr. Morris your number, and we will follow up after, and you can wait for your report. Who's next, please?
Hi, good evening to everyone. Acknowledgement of the head table.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Dave Hurley, and I'm from the Baltic Boscobel area. And I'd like to speak on at least 3 matters, just to bring to your all attention. The first one is...
You have to speak a little louder in the mic, though. I don't know where
the first one is the widening of the road between Boscobel and Denmark Corner. Widening of the roads between Boscobel and Denmark Corner. I know the parliamentary rep, we have visited some of these areas, and the main one that's concerned is the one in Lower Castle, just on top of the hill of Denmark Corner, where the road is seriously narrowed. And if you have to meet 2 buses or 2 trucks have to meet in that area at a speed, someone will go over. Vehicles have gone over before. The last was last year where 2 cars went over on the left-hand side going into the ditch down there. And I think that the request was to have some gabions built and widen that area of the road. And then there's the corners that need to be cut that we call blind corners going from Denmark Corner all the way up to Boscobel. My other concern is that the wells within that area and also on Portland Main Road. Now, we have a runoff of water that comes from Mount Number 1 that goes towards Gaze in St. Peter. There's a well going into Gaze right at the beginning of at the bottom of the road. That well have not been cleaned in over decades, let me put it that way. And then the silt that comes from the mount, the slush and everything is on the road between the pavilion going towards Gaze. Now, there's a new housing development that has started just underneath the mount last week. The roads are being cut. And I know that there's going to be another set of runoff water that's going to be coming in that direction. So we are in a water-scarce country, as we are saying, and I think that millions of gallons of water goes towards the sea, that we can capture some of that water to help replenish our aquifers. And I'm saying that at the bottom of the mount gap, we can have another well sunk so that I can capture some of that water, because between the Gaze and the mount, we have about 20 water courses that go directly towards Cove Bay, Little Bay, Grants, and those areas where we can capture water to help replenish our systems. Now, there are also 2, what we would call, there's in the call sacks, yes. In the castle, Lower Castle, that also captures some water. And I think that they're on the castle plantation, yes, but they capture the water off the road. And I think with the help of the drainage unit and government, we can probably help utilize those, keep them clear so that the amount of water that goes into them, we can also capture that. And my last and final point would be the wells on Portland Main Road. Those wells were cleaned about 2 or 3 years ago. And when they were being cleaned, the sludge and the mud was at the top of the wells. Now, it's back up again because all the debris have refilled the wells and the water is not going into the wells anymore. And the other thing is that the road has sunk beyond the pullover that is on the main. I think we discussed that, Mr. Jordan, we went and look at it. Not only on Portland, but over here, so in going to Wally's, where the water is not running into the gutters to go where it's supposed to go. The water is just running on the road, which will cause, something called flooding, which is not necessarily that it be flooding, but because the water not getting into the gutters. So that's something that has to be looked at. And on that note, I think Those are my three main points.
Mr. Hurley, I know you were very active in the DEO, District Emergency Organization, correct? It's still active?
Yes, ma'am.
And is there typically, are these things that typically you feed into the District Emergency Organization too? Because we have to reach a stage in this country where those things that are capable of causing disasters to be far worse than they will otherwise be are taken as a matter of course. I'm going to ask both Mr. Tudor and Mr. Yearwood to answer you with respect to the concerns that you've raised, particularly Mr. Tudor, on the issue of the widening of the road between Boscobel and Diamond Corner. I believe that I did a site visit also with y'all in Boscobel, and the issue is whether that is in the CAF program or which program it is. With respect to the wells, Mr. Yearwood, we're trying to get a systematic program in place. And the first thing that, once again, the absence of a comprehensive inventory of all wells on the island is also causing problems. And these are things that we're trying to put in place as a matter of course so that you don't have to be butting about and waiting on people or wait people to bring only local knowledge, but you have a clear schedule of maintenance. And equally, when the district emergency organizations see that it is not functioning, that they're in a position also to bring it to the attention of the DEM, and by extension then, DEM brings it to the attention of the Ministry of Public Works. So I know you've been working hard in this parish in the matter of district emergency coordination.
Yes, ma'am. And just one final point.
Uh-huh.
There was some talk about patching of roads. And one of the things that we got coming from the depot of Jerusalem, that there's no materials. My question would be, I see about 4 piles of milling stuff that came from the runway pile up, stock at the airport. I was wondering if we can utilize that to help patch some of the roads.
I would think so too, but Mr. Tudor can answer you. Mr. Tudor, come.
Thank you, ma'am.
A little common sense sometimes works a long way, but perhaps you and I have a different approach to common sense. Mr. Tudor, talk to the people, please. You may have to lower the mic so that people can hear you. Sorry, sir. Thank you.
With respect to the widening of the road between Boscobel and Diamond Corner, we will have to check that out. I'm not sure if it requires compulsory acquisition of land, but we will have a look at it sometime during this week and see what what can be done. The road at Worley going to Hammond's is sinking. That too will have to be investigated. I'm not sure. The first time I'm hearing that complaint, so it will have to be investigated.
Yeah, but I'm surprised that you don't know about the issue of Boscobel to Diamond Corner, particularly since I'm told that even just until you can build the gabions and widen the road, you need to put barriers as a matter of public safety. And I'd like you, and Minister, I'd like you to make sure that when we do the tour tomorrow, that is somewhere that we look at and that we can get the barriers put in to ensure at the very least public safety while you work to do whatever you have to do to widen the road. Okay?
Yeah. All right.
And is this not, isn't some of the Boscobel roads not in CAF?
Yeah, no. CAF roads are...
Where are you dealing with Centipede Alley?
That's CAF.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and Millionaire Road.
Right, but there are other roads in Boscobel, but Centipede Alley is in the CAF project, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Right.
Yeah. With respect to the patching, we had some issues with the contractor, one of the contractors getting hot mix. That issue has been resolved, so you should be seeing roads in St. Peter and the rest of Barbados getting patched as of last week, actually. But one of the contractors, he was paving at night, so he couldn't pave during the day as well. That was what he was saying. So, but that has been solved now, so we should be getting mix from both Infra and C.O. Williams going forward to patch potholes.
And Rayside has too, doesn't it?
Rayside? No.
The hot mix? I thought you told me that they're selling hot mix too.
No.
They have asphalt.
I'm not even sure if they got asphalt. I only know about Infra and Cow. Who? This is GMB.
Yeah, GMB is trying to start it. They do not have all the materials yet.
So that
start up.
MTW spoke in advance when it told me that then?
Well, I don't. They
No
are
problem.
coming online shortly. They are coming online shortly.
That's what we were told at St. Lucie for the record.
Okay.
So you need to be able to double check because obviously the scale of the government's road programs, you are going to have a lot of pressure, and once any supplier can meet the minimum specifications, because like with Highway 1, you are going to have to hold people accountable for the work that they do.
Yes.
Okay.
We have tested the material that they've had to supply to the ministry, and the material meets our specifications. So the specifications aspect is not a problem, but we have they still have to sign contracts and stuff in order to go forward.
Oh, so you know about the company now? You learn fast, or you remember fast. Thank you, Mr. Tudor. Let Mr. Yeoman talk. I beg you do.
Good night, head table. Good everyone. Yes, I must haven't seen Mr. Hurley for a while, but have been working. The division has worked with Mr. Hurley from as far back as 2002, I think it is. We had a project under the Japanese, and we've done some work with them. And a few DOs in Barbados that are functional and are really contribute to the work of the drainage division. But in terms of the wells listed, I'll contact Mr. Hurley tonight and try to get the new inspector for the district engaging the DOs more in the north in his district to get the work done. The wells I've noted, I'll have a list. We do have a new well contract, and there are more contractors coming forward than we've had previously. So we're expecting performance and expect more work to be done in that area.
Where are we with the completion of the inventory of all of the wells island-wide, please?
No, that is one of the, we're not progressed as fast as we've spoken about. First of all, it's challenges with terms of staffing. We did think about having it outsourced, but when we engaged the persons, we found that the method we're using, we have an existing inventory of just short of 4,000 wells. They're all paper-based. And the persons who came to us want to use technology to start from scratch. We are saying we need to first locationally correct our existing inventory because the unique well numbers are linked to the coordinates. If we do that, then we can go for, once we got the inventory of all the correct georeference of all the wells we have in our inventory, then we can have other persons bringing wells. If we start bringing all the ones we have, wells coming in, they will be included the ones we have and don't have, and it creates confusion. We have done so far about 1,500 of those 4,000. We're doing it in-house, and we have money allocated this year for...
1,500 of those 4,000 now have unique identifiers?
All have unique identifiers. What I'm saying is that the method for numbering the wells in the past were based on the map references, land surveys map references, and the coordinates. So if we need to have those corrected in terms of locationally correct, because the method of mapping was on paper base. We are using JS now, and we need to ensure that we know where the reason why the existing 4,000 wells we have in our inventory all were linked to contracts in the past.
Yeah, I think what has to happen is that you all need to put a project together, PS, Minister, and have the project have a definitive beginning and end, and let us get this behind us, because as long as we don't know where all of the wells are, you're going to continue to have problems. And the last point is this, and the PS, you may want to answer this specifically, as to where we are, you are the CTO, with respect to the obligations of plantations with respect to their wells and what you have done to try to enforce, and what has been the response and what you will do next. Mr. You already finished on other drainage matters before they come?
The other issue with the small already, when Mr. Hurley spoke about the sucks or the depressions, we have started to new effort in rehabilitating or creating new detention ponds take water because the wells are not taking the water fast enough given the intensity of rainfall. And so we can review, look at what he's speaking about, and if those can be incorporated into detention ponds or rehabilitate, we'll do that. Yeah? If I can speak, P.S., about the plantations someday? Yeah, go ahead. Okay. We had written a number of plantation owners based on the addresses given in the land tax. The Drainage Division and the ministry have a long process of, go through a long process of having those addresses. We have to go through a surveyor at the ministry. And we've written them 2 years ago. We got some feedback from some of them. Most of them within the Redland Valley and the St. George Valley. I think because they use water and they're in active agriculture. A lot of the others are not, the ones who are not in active agriculture are the ones who we have problems with. Some are, have absentee owners, they're overseas. And we are thinking about having someone go out and physically, because some of the plantations are used for other uses. Some of them don't have, the houses have been separated from the plantations themselves. And the subdivision of the great houses from the plantations themselves makes it difficult to find the owners. Previously, you could have gone to a plantation yard and the persons there had a relationship to the lands themselves, but they've been subdivided and find it much difficult to find the owners.
Thank you. My concern is, though, that having written 2 years ago, P.S., what is being done to follow up? Because at the end of the day, the failure to us to have the wells across the island clean will always exacerbate flooding, correct?
Correct.
So, please.
Yeah, good night, everyone. Prime Minister, we are tackling that on two fronts. One, the Barbados Water Authority is well advanced in the survey of wells on plantations. I don't have the exact number now, but from my last conversation with Dr. Mwanza, they've completed more than 65%. So that identifies the wells on the plantations. And from the legislative standpoint, we are actually working on the Prevention of Floods Act, because while we have legislation, it is, dated, for want of a better word, dated and weak. So therefore, we were trying to use moral suasion to get the plantation owners to come forward. Mr. Yearwood didn't mention this, but we have now seen, I guess you can call it a new practice, but because of the manner in which persons furrow, it seems that people no longer furrow using the contours. So you get a lot of furrowing where the water ends up in the road, and that's why we're having so much problems with silt. Because the area that the gentleman mentioned in Portland, as I was saying to Charles, that is a very dangerous area, because as you come out of a depression, you go right into that area that is silted over. So I think when we have a modern Prevention of Floods Act, we have also done some research and we have looked at acts in Jamaica, in Trinidad, and in St. Vincent, but they're not really robust. So we have a team that is...
I think we need to follow up first principles on this, as we sometimes have to do. Legislation comes from settled policy.
Yeah.
And settled policy comes from investigation. And that. The bottom line is that in a climate crisis, and I think y'all have already started, we have asked you to review all of your standards, because things like the size of gutters and the angle and all of those things have to change now, because what we are facing is shorter, sharper showers that will cause greater problems. In Barbados, everybody believes that once water accumulates, it is a flood. But Mr. Yearwood, I think you have to give time for water to run off, and once it runs off within a reasonable period of time, you can't say that it is a flood. So we have to change all of the standards. And with the new Prevention of Floods Act, you're going to have to literally sit down, in my humble opinion, with the Ministry of Agriculture, the farmers and plantation owners, and work back from first principles to be able to see what needs to be done in a modern Barbados that is facing a climate crisis to make sure that this does not end up being the bane of a lot of people's existence because of it destroying their property and, God forbid, as happened in the case of Karoo, their lives. Okay? And the one thing about floods is that we are more likely, we know when a hurricane is coming, but we are unlikely to know very often when some of these short, sharp showers can, in a 2 or 3 hour period, wreak absolute havoc for communities and households. Yeah?
Yes, Prime Minister.
So let us agree to have that session with agriculture and the farmers and also the engineers, so that when we do the new policy instructions for the AG, for the Prevention of Flood Act, it is based on an analysis of modern Barbados 2023.
Yes, Prime Minister. And one final thing before I take my seat. The ministry, within the last 2 financial years, we've done in excess of about 35 retention and detention ponds, where about 35 retention and detention ponds.
All of this has come out of our Rubbing Shoulders program, a lot of them. Not true, Mr. Yearwood? Which one? So that means the ones that you've seen in Rubbing Shoulders you haven't dealt with yet? Not all? What percentage? Because to have done 35 and still not met the other ones means that you obviously need to reprioritize how we're working.
We will reprioritize, especially in the upcoming financial year, but I will let Charles expand on that.
We'll have to invite you to
the mere fact that this rain has come down, how it does is to remind you that we are in a race against time.
Yes. I just want to say I'll invite you to visit the others that weren't on Rubbing Shoulders.
Right, but there are numbers that you have done. Haven't we done stuff in Christchurch and elsewhere, the retention ponds?
Indeed. In fact, remember before Rubbing Shoulders, when I think the first year came in, we had the issue at Wotton, and we had done what that wasn't under the retention ponds. That was on the response to climatic conditions.
A response to Tropical Storm Kirk in September of 2018 specifically.
Correct. Right. Yeah. And we did those at that time. I think those included Wotton, Bayland, we did Clark's Avenue, like a number of them. So those were really out of that, attempting then to develop from there what would be the approach. Because once you have a plan like that, wells weren't working. And having done the work.
Once, sir, that you remember that members of parliament have a duty to constituents.
Yeah.
And when they make a legitimate request of the ministry, they expect the ministry to consider it. And what we're up against is literally, ultimately, trying to get a race against time to minimize the damage as happened with the freak storm.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good night, everybody. My name is Pamela Worrell. I want to talk
We're
about...
not getting the name because of the rain now. We're having challenges, so we're going to have to ask you to speak a little louder.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Pamela Worrell, and I live in the area of Spikestown. And I am here talking about the state of the main roads connecting from Highway 2A to Spikestown using Highway 1. These are the roads that are in deplorable state. Worley Road, The Wim, Bakers, Roeview, Gibbs's.
All right, not so fast, because we want to write them down to make sure we can follow up there.
Worley Road. That is the road that you are telling us to use since the farm bridge has collapsed.
Bakers.
Bakers. The Wim.
The Wim.
Roeview. Gibbs's. Those are the roads that lead directly to Spikestown. Well, well, I didn't remember that one.
Which one?
Clark's Road, yes. Since the road on the farm has been closed, we are forced to find a road without having to lose your vehicle in the process. I want to find out one, when these roads will be, but not patch. They've gone past the stage of patching. They have to be repaired. And could you give us a time lag that when this thing here will be fixed up, if possible? That's the first one. The second thing that I am concerned with is the illegal construction of some shacks outside the bus terminal between the light and the terminal when you're driving, coming up from the police station and you want to turn, you can't really see. I'm wondering, since you have this program saying that you're going to have 7 vendor sites, why can't St. Peter get at least one?
Yeah. I think the MP wants to speak. I think he's ahead of you.
Just this morning, well, I've been speaking to Senior Minister Simmons. It is not his portfolio, but he has the same challenge I have. But I asked that question specifically this morning because in Parliament, I asked it in Parliament as part of the estimates, because while right at the corner is already a vending zone, above the fence of the terminal is not, and across the road is not. And I have submitted to the ministry asking for that area, well, there were 2 in St. Peter, that area, and then the area in Malna Quarter on the other side of the road from Trimark, where there are also some vending activity taking place. I want both those areas to be designated as vending zones. And the minister, actually, I think I saw the minister here, the Minister of State in the ministry, she responded to the question that I put, and I indicated I wanted a timeline. It was not given a timeline because there are a number of things that are to take place. But one of the things that I mentioned is that while we are waiting for these permissions and different things to happen, I suggested through a question that there needs to be engagement with those involved so that while we wait for all the procedural stuff to happen, that we know, for example, what you mentioned, particularly about being able, visibility. So whatever happens, because I believe that people need an opportunity to earn a living. There are a lot of people living in challenging situations and they need to be able to earn a living, but it needs to be done properly. And I really want the Ministry of Business to move post haste with respect to regularizing the area, not moving the persons, but regularizing it so that there's toilet facilities and all those other things that are necessary for vending. That was raised this morning, and Minister Husbands can attest to it because she attempted to respond when I spoke.
But, okay. So,
I'm
the people of St. Peter will hear some feedback about.
Yeah, but I was about to ask the Deputy Prime Minister to answer on your initial concerns.
Yes, please.
With the roads.
Yes, please.
And Minister Jordan has already answered you in terms of his request for a dedicated vending zone expansion. Go ahead, ma'am.
All right, so Ms. Worrell, you listed maybe about 4 or 5 roads that you considered are pretty bad condition. I can tell you I have a list with quite a few others that are also in equally bad condition just within the parish of St. Peter and St. James and all of the other surrounding parishes. And so I just want to reiterate the point that the fact that we did not have the level of investment into road rehabilitation for a number of years has actually made, in addition to the issues of climate change, has made the conditions of the roads obviously worse. So pretty much every single parish we go to, there is a crying out by the residents for road rehabilitation to be done. Now, we can do patching as a temporary measure it doesn't solve the problem, but sometimes that is what we have to do in order to be able to at least alleviate some of the large potholes. We've said we'll do the short road program because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that persons are able to get out of their houses where they are compromised by so doing, or so the fire trucks can get into the elderly person who is in the neighborhood. We've said some of the roads require full reconstruction because of the length of time that they have not had any repairs, and of course that comes with a cost. The issue of the mill and pave, also we've been looking at even different technologies, looking at whether it's the concrete roads, roller compacted concrete, trying to see different mechanisms that will allow us to be able to allow roads to last longer. Because the one thing that we don't want to do is just patch the roads and then you end up with the same issues of drainage that obviously are causing so many problems right now. Some of the monies that we've had allocated are obviously going to the Scotland district. Trying to make sure that we are able to improve those areas. We've also had some monies under the CAF fund, which again, we've listed a number of roads, but we've had to prioritize. And I think most recently, I would have mentioned that to address this issue of the public feeling as though we're just hand-picking roads, we've actually invested in the technology through the IDB to be able to allow us now to better map the type of roads across the countries that are needing to be prioritized, rather than us just choosing a road because there's an outcry of the roads to be done. That technology, it is my hope that we will be able to better assess and to prioritize what needs to be done. Because right now, everything needs to be done, okay, across Barbados. But we have to, with the resources that we have available to us, it is a case of trying to spend wisely while at the same time not allowing roads to further deteriorate as a result of climate change as well.
But you know that on Highway 1, any given evening, it takes more than an hour to get from Old Town to Spicestown. That is on Highway 1. Don't talk about Highway 2.
I'm going to ask you to do, because I think that we really need context. Mr. Tudor, how long have you been in the ministry? So I think if you could give Mr. Tudor an opportunity to explain and then you come back and he can answer again, because there was a period of time when little or no road works were being done. How long are we talking about, sir? Because what has built up has been a backlog of tremendous proportions. Can you speak? Because I don't want the politicians speaking no more on this. I think you need, and the CTO need to speak to these issues, but you can speak as the direct person. No, don't let the CTO doesn't deal with roads directly. She just come in a couple years ago. You've been dealing with the roads directly. Talk to the country, my brother.
You put me in a difficult position. We have many of the roads, or a lot of the roads in Barbados have been neglected for last 20 years.
And let's talk also about the bridges too.
Right, correct. There was a bridge survey done in 1985, and we have not really tackled the bridges, particularly in the Scotland district, since then. It's about 30, 40 years since we really handled the bridges in the Scotland district. And for that reason, we have the Complat program, where we're looking at rehabilitating, I think it's about 12 or 13 bridges in the Scotland district. But with respect to St. Peter, there's a lot of work to be done in St. Peter. And hopefully, this coming financial year, we have identified a number of roads for St. Peter that we plan to do. I don't know if you want me to list those roads or...
That's the ones that you have, but the point that I wanted you to be able to cause people, I don't want adjectives anymore. Speak specifically, because people will only understand. I'm here talking to you while trying to bring up the estimates, because the Ministry of Public Works is one of the largest recipients of money to do capital projects in this country. And you are now getting a barrel of money, correct? That you were not getting to do roads. You got equipment. The first thing I did when we came to office was to do what? to agree to buy $10 million in equipment.
Correct.
You have now asked for more equipment, which we are also buying.
Right.
But speak, because unless you speak and give context, people will feel that the failure to do roads is part of a willful expression of a government that does not care or is not interested in doing. Give context, my brother.
All I can say is that the roads have deteriorated to the extent that they no longer can be patched. Most of these roads now need to be totally rehabilitated. Right? They've reached that stage. You go from patching to mill and paving to total reconstruction.
And how long was it that y'all failed to do roads in St. Peter and St. Lucie and St. Andrew and St. Joseph? Answer directly. And St. James, in truth. Because everybody just feel that this problem happened last year or a year before or during COVID.
That is true. The thing is, we did as much as the money allowed us to do at the time.
But you still didn't answer? You didn't tell nobody what time you're talking about? Because people might feel like it's this time.
No. This isn't this time at all. This is the first time you've had the level of the level of financing and things that we've had in, well, at least in my time, my 36, 37 years in the ministry, right? We have been able to get enough money to do much more than we have in the past. In the past, what? Okay, I am responsible for preparing the list of roads to be done in the various parishes, various constituencies, what have you. And the way it is done is I look at three things. The complaints from the residents.
One meeting.
Complaints from the residents. The depot responses, in other words, what the depot officers said needs to be fixed, and also from the representatives for the particular constituency. And I more or less put those together, come up with a costing, and then we determine what we're going to do based on the money that we received. This is the first time in God knows how many years that we are getting more money than, or we're getting we're getting money. We're getting a decent amount of money. What would happen is sometimes they would ask for $2 million and get 700,000, 800,000. And the challenge then is, what do I do with this money? I don't know. Where to start, right? So
that has not been your challenge recently, because I am now looking at the estimates.
Right.
And this is the point that I really, really want to make.
Right.
That this ministry, and I'm going to require that you do a public statement determining and showing how much money has been spent on roads in Barbados since the 21st century. You're going to start from the year 2000 and you're going to come right down. And you're going to do it pictorially in a graph too, so that anybody who can get hurt with numbers can look at the graph and look and see when the dip came and look and see when the dips come back up to the air, up to the top. Yeah. Because we have to be realistic. When we came to office, there was no money spent on schools either for years. And I can go back to when I first came as Minister of Education in 1994. Barbados had not had a schools program for primary schools for 5 years when I became Minister of Education. And the summer program became then reintroduced. And of course, like with everything else, you start to fix the schools and then people say you ain't doing enough. And then people also saying that it ain't clean enough and it didn't finish enough. So you get through all of those. Similarly, Santia will tell you that when she became Minister of Education, the schools had not the majority of schools speak Santia, because this is what is now catching up. And had we not lost 2.5 years in COVID, we would have been much further ahead even now. But you couldn't, what you're going to do in COVID when the majority of movement was restricted. So we have to explain to our people what we found, what has been done traditionally, where the money was or wasn't spent in this particular instance, and where it is being spent now. Santia?
Right, a similar situation obtained in education. I think it's important to go back, but also to show the country that it's not just roads that are the issue, or that we inherited a problem with the roads. they had not been, the previous administration was not spending the money on repairs to the schools. I think most of you will recall in 2018, I became the minister of rats and infestation and cockroaches, and unions were up in arms because the schools, the conditions at the schools were just deplorable. And we, again, speaking to Prime Minister, we said we have to be able to start these repairs across the institutions. And that is what we did. We did the primary schools, we did electrical upgrades, we started to address systematically by prioritizing, first of all, what were the schools that were in the worst condition, and then working through to then make a decision as to how we deal with those priority schools and then how we finance the other institutions. So it is no different in terms of what the policy or the principle is here in relation to roads. Everything needs doing right now, but we have to be able to prioritize, and the public also has to appreciate what we found. It's not an excuse. People say we're looking at what happened before. It's not about looking at what happened before. This is our reality. And if it is that everything now has broken down, then just as you would prioritize within your household which bills you are going to pay and what you are going to repair, as a government, we don't have a choice but to start to prioritize and reprioritize in a different way, given the resources that we have. So, Judah, you can continue, but as I said, I don't see it any different, and the ministry staff will tell you, I keep speaking to priorities. It is not about what an MP wants. It is about what are the roads that people traffic heavily, what are the roads where we have issues in terms of safety, because that obviously has to be paramount for the ministry. We've invested this year in when we get to the estimates, you'll see, we've invested heavily in bridge repairs because, as Judah said, nothing was done since the 1980s in relation to our bridges. So by going after from 2018 the monies to be able to, from the Chinese to be able to get money to do the bridges in the Scotland district, we have the potential now to be able to start the repair program. But here's the thing, every bridge can't get done all the same time. So it is still going to take some time for us to do it. We have to do engineering designs. We've got to get all of the geotechnical studies in place. And I think the public still has to appreciate that process, because to get to the point where we can see the transformation, there is considerable work that still has to go into the preparatory stages in order for us to see the transformation. But we have got more resources available to us, and Judah and the others will agree. What we have to do now within the ministry is to be able to execute as quickly as we possibly can while taking the country through exactly what we are doing at each stage.
All right. In terms of the money we would like to spend or we plan to spend, I did a quick calculation, and it's about $4.67 million that we'll be spending in St. Peter alone. And we'll be doing roads, Indian Ground to Roebuck to Fort Hill.
That is just under $5 million for one parish in St. Peter.
Correct.
But what's the amount for the total amount for the year?
I'm not sure. I know. Yes.
You have $81 million. $91 million was spent in this current revised estimates for road network services alone. $91 million alone. I am trying to go back to the estimates of 2015, 16, 17, 18, so that you get an idea of how that compares to what we're spending. Because people need to appreciate that if you don't do anything, and you would normally do 50 roads a year, 40 roads a year, and you don't do it for 7, 8, 9 years, how many do you have then that have not been done?
No.
You understand?
Yeah.
So that is partially what you're up against, isn't it?
Correct.
And then when you get the short, sharp showers increasing, what does that weather do to the roads, sir?
Well, the thing is, with climate change now, we're finding the roads are deteriorating that much faster because we have the water remaining ponding on the road that much longer. The water gets into the subsurface, and the roads develop potholes, and then you have major problems. So we have to look at, well, we have been looking at alternative ways of upgrading our roads, fixing our roads. Deputy Prime Minister spoke about roller compacted concrete. This is where you're using concrete instead of hot mix asphalt to pave the roads. In other jurisdictions, we found that those roads last 40, 50, 60 years once they were done in concrete. So we're looking at that as an alternative. But you must bear in mind that that is going to mean the roads would be that much more expensive. They're going to last longer, but the initial cost outlay would be greater to build these roads, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. You don't want me to list the roads or don't?
Yes, please. The actual expenditure on roads in 2015, 2016 was 34 million. So you begin to understand that this government is spending more than 3 times the amount that was previously spent on roads 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
Correct.
That's what we're up against. Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
Indian Ground to Roebuck to Floor Hill, Centipede Alley, Millionaire Road, Sweet Home Road, Black Bess Road.
What was the last one?
Pardon me?
Sweet Home.
Sweet Home, yeah. We want to do Farm Road as well, but Farm Road was started late because we only had that thing a couple of weeks ago. But we're looking at doing Farm Road out of Gabions, as well as Missum Bottom. That would be another Gabion project to be done. Right. As was said before, our work at the Tree Hill was restarted in January. We had to wait on the Water Authority had finished laying there, putting in their pipes. So that work has started back at the Tree Hill. 2 roads that we have here, Gaze and Airview. Those are going to be done under what we call the Community Access Road Program. We call it the CART Road Program. Basically, we're going to be getting milling stuff from the airport, doing some excavation on these roads, and filling it with the mill material, penetrating it with what we call asphalt emulsion and rolling it. So those are pretty low-cost roads that would allow people to get out from their homes to the main road without having to walk through a lot of mud. So those are just two of the roads that we have listed, but I'm sure there are many other roads in St. Peter that will be done in that manner. That's about it. So the lady
Yes,
that was here,
ma'am.
the lady that was here.
Would you want Mr. Tudor to answer anything else?
The main road. I think that road is part of the Highway 1 phase.
Yeah, let me address that, ma'am. That highway, the rest of Highway 1 has been put on pause. We always knew we were doing the bottom of University Hill to Seaview Road in Holt Town, where Holt Town Junction meets Seaview Road. There are a number of construction projects that are about to be undertaken in Holt Town. And that's why we paused doing any more from Holt Town to Speightstown for now. Because the road, when fixed, will now be traversed by enough heavy trucks every day.
Correct.
Every day. There are 3 major projects in Holt Town alone that will be started, 2 this year for sure, and the other one possibly by the end of the year, early next year. We therefore also have a problem with Highway 7. And the people have been complaining. Minister Duguid is here, and the Christchurch MPs have also been complaining for some time. The government has to allocate what it does for major highways, what it does for the side roads and residential roads, what it does for short roads, what it does for tenantry roads.
Residential roads.
Okay? And therefore, the work that we will spend on the major highways separate from the completion of the IDB project, which is doing that road, Carmichael Road. How long Carmichael Road need doing, anybody? Anybody know Carmichael Road, Cross Border Hall? How long that road need doing?
20 years, at least 20 years.
You understand? It only now getting due. Highway 7 is equally in as bad a position as Highway 1. Highway 1 has had its first installment, and I've asked the minister also to address the public about the areas in Highway 1 in Paynes Bay that are dropping in an unacceptable way, and maybe you can speak to some of it before you leave the mic, or the CTO can speak. But Highway 7 is likely to start first before we do that. When you hear me talk about fiscal space, anybody here know what he's talking about? That you could got all the money in the world. But if I don't have the room in the budget each year, because every year we also got to pay down debt too. And if we don't have the room, no matter how much money you give me, I don't have the room to spend it, I got to leave it off to the next year, or I got to make sure that some of these projects are done outside of central government and outside of state-owned enterprises in order for us to be able to have them done. Like the housing program, government has a housing program, but it is you, the individual, that going for the mortgage and you paying for the house. So that doesn't come on to government, central government's balance sheet anymore. That's how we can keep that project going. Similarly, we can't do all of the highways one time with the best will in the world, because we still have other things to do. And part and parcel of the problem also is that you need to coordinate with the Water Authority, with the National Petroleum Corporation, and with the telephone company, with the light and power, because what do you put under the road? Huh? Anybody?
Services.
What you put under the road?
Services.
All the services. So therefore, that's why I say to you, bear with us. We didn't get this way overnight. But if ever there's a lesson for the future for this country and for people in this country, is that when you don't maintain things, what happens to them? They destroy, they get mashed up. And therefore, I'm asking us to recognize that we need to have a systematic approach to maintenance in order to make sure that the country does not come into this position again. I feel for you. I wish I could do it just like that. But with the best will in the world, what we've done is that we've made sure, as I said, $80-something million year before, $90-something million this year. We probably will reach over $100 million in the next financial year, which means that we're doing a mob ton of roads. 3 to 4 times the amount of money is being spent now. And Mr. Tudor, you can speak to the people, you know, because you had no equipment when we came in.
This is true.
And the government of Barbados was paying hundreds of people, maybe even over 1,000 PS at Public Works. And what were they coming to work to do for the most part for 5, 6, 7 years before? There were no materials, no equipment, and very little contracts being issued. So you were paying people to do what? Just to come to work. But they had no tools to do the job. Okay? So we're going to get there. Thank you.
If I can just spend a couple of minutes talking about Highway 1, the first phase of Highway 1.
Please.
Now, Highway 1 started out as a project, $17 million project. I think at the end it was around $20 million that was spent. The project went from November 5th to July, the end of July, November 5th, 2020 to the end of July 2021. Right? During that time, we had COVID, we had to battle COVID, we had to battle ashfall, we had to battle 2 storms, right? In terms of utilities, basically it was started as a mill and pave job, but it ended up being basically the whole reconstruction, the whole 4 miles of road from the bottom of University down to Seaview. One of the biggest issues was the utilities. We spent $7.8 million in utilities on that road. We had 110 manholes. I'm not talking about little manholes. We're talking manholes 8 feet by 10 feet wide, 6 feet by 8 feet wide, 110 of those. Right? We laid pipes for the whole stretch from bottom of Rendezvous down to the same Seaview.
Not Rendezvous.
Sorry, Seaview. From the bottom of University down to
I
Seaview.
hope that that's a good sign that Highway 7 is so much on your head that you call it Rendezvous.
I'm not a public speaker, so I kind of nervous.
Not
here,
public
so
speaker.
Right.
But the point is that Highway 7 is on your head now.
Right, yes. So the point is this, that, I mean, on a call-in program a couple of days ago, I heard the moderator and another gentleman talking, And the impression I got was that Highway 1 was falling into the sea. Right? I visited myself, and the major problem that we have down there is the manholes. The manholes need to be raised. We have about between 38 and 40 manhole covers that need to be raised and be flushed to the rest of the road. That in itself is going to cost us $98,000. We were of the opinion that the utility companies would have pitched in and raised these manholes because it is their manholes. But basically what they're saying is that it is not our responsibility.
And what is the lesson, sir? What is the lesson learned?
We will tighten our contract going forward, especially
that you will now amend the contracts and place the responsibility for the manholes on who it belongs.
Correct.
But yours is an example of to assume is to use what? AWS out of you and me.
Yes.
That's what is assume spells. So you can't, and the AG will tell you that you can't hope that people will do things. You have to require it. In the technical proposals and considerations in the contract.
So going forward, that is what will happen. But rest assured that those manholes will be raised very shortly already. And the valve boxes, yes. Thank you, PS. Right, so that will be done shortly. But to all intents and purposes, the road is a good road, except for the same sunken manholes that were repaired. That's all I really wanted to say on the issue.
The proof of the pudding is in the eating. Please make sure that we fix these manholes as quickly as possible so that people don't have their shocks mashed up even on the roads that were fixed.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for that comprehensive presentation, Mr. Tudor. I really appreciate it. Who's next?
Good night, Madam Prime Minister and members of the head table and all of
Good night, sir.
All of the persons present here. I am Francis Vaughan and I reside at the Baltic in St. Peter. I know this is a dead horse that's being flogged, but water is essential. We need it. We can't live without it. I've been spending some extra money, including, well, the water bill. I can't complain about that because the water that I have to drink now costs me 3 times as much. And then, not only that, I stopped cooking with it. I buy water to drink. I venture out, spend gas to go and collect water to cook with. So that is hitting me hard in my pocket. And not only me, but members of the basketball community. Now, it is said that St. Basketball is behind God's back. And that also hits into St. Lucie because we border St. Lucie and I traverse St. Lucie fairly often. I understand that some pipes which were destined for the north were redirected to the south. I heard Mr. Leslie saying that emergencies come up. But you must remember that while the grass is growing, the horse is starving. And that is what we in Boscobel and parts of St. Lucie are suffering with. We hope that this diversion was...
Well, the first thing I need to do is to find out if the diversion took place. Mr. Leslie, Mr. Halliday, Alex, are you all able to confirm that you all diverted pipe from Boscobel? Because far from that, as I told you, I put money in Boscobel straight off with the tank when they indicated that the tank would not withstand the pressure of a Category 1 or Category 2 hurricane. It did not have the same number of people depending on the tank. And in spite of that, this government insisted that the tank be built for the people of Boscobel. So I think that would more put Boscobel in front of God's eyes and the country's eyes. Just to let you know that, trust me, there is no desire whatsoever to unfair the people of Boscobel, not from me, nor anybody sitting next to me. And I think you would know why and how. Having said that, there genuinely is a balancing of the needs across the country with respect to water. But I would like the gentleman to confirm, because I don't want the conversation to go off on a thesis that might be speculative. Mr. Halliday or Mr. Leslie, can you please let us know, thank you, whether pipes were diverted or not? And I think we did, he explained that we had done Lambert's to Tree Hill already, and we're continuing to do others.
Yes, Prime Minister and members of the public, there is no, well, when I said resources have to be diverted, what I'm saying is that, okay, the main on the Worley Road, that was not a main that was high up on our priority, but we had to go in there 2 Fridays ago and use some of the materials that we had for one of our wells to relay the main on the bridge. So we didn't actually divert resources that were coming from somewhere else. Actually, what we did in Lambert's to Boscobel, we would have used the materials that we had for Highway 7, and we've replaced those materials. But because that road between Lambert's to Boscobel was breaking so frequently, we had to bring that up on the priority. So it's a balancing act where as priorities arise, we have to keep juggling.
But to my certain knowledge, I know about the diversion of the pipes from Highway 7 to the north, because Highway 7 was not going to be done first. Highway 1 was being done between Holetown and University Hill. So believe you me, the problem is broader and wider than you think. But it is about balancing needs across all 166 square miles. And as I keep saying, if you weren't spending money before, you get an accumulated position. And you're hearing about mains, then start to talk to you about district lines. And we spoke about that in St. Lucie on the last occasion, because the district lines are the ones that you get the most reports for leaks when the month comes. 1,200 you said? Service lines, and they're not capable of keeping up with that because of the quality of the pipes across the entire island. Go ahead, sir.
I am aware, because I walk the streets and I can see what comes out of the burst mains, or when they're bleeding mains. I see what comes out, and that is what made me to stop from drinking the water, because it's rusty. And I don't want to be consuming rust. Anyway, I hope that if it did, you said it didn't happen, but let's pass that.
Far from that, as I said, pipes were brought to the north from Highway 7.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay. My second point doesn't really affect me directly, but the bus system. You get a bus coming to Boscobel, and then when it's returning, it has Spice Town listed as the destination. I understand from some person in my area and from the Paikana area that if you catch that bus that is registered for Spice Town, and you are going to town, when you get into Spice Town, you have to pay again. I don't know if it's true, but if it is, I think it's discriminatory. I think buses leaving Boscobel or Paikana, the case might be, should be going directly going to Bridgetown, because there are certain things that you cannot do in Spicetown. You have to go to Bridgetown to do, and that is going to hit people in their pockets too.
Okay, Ms. Holder is here now, so I'll ask her to address that, and the earlier concerns. I gave the assurance, Ms. Holder and Mr. Wharton, both are here, that we will review, because this issues came up in St. Lucie too, with private persons with licenses not servicing the route across day and night as is the requirement in the license. But secondly, to ensure that as we get additional buses, that we also pay attention to the north. But on this specific issue, Ms. Holder, thank you.
Good night, Prime Minister. Good night, everyone. As it relates to the specific query raised just now, if any bus is coming from Boscobel and it carries the destination sign of Speightstown, that would be someone who is ending duty in Speightstown. That is not our normal procedure. So when they're ending duty in Speightstown, then you get to Speightstown and you are transferred to a bus going to Bridgetown. If it is not happening, we will definitely have to look into that because that is not the policy. You are supposed to come from Boscobel and go to Bridgetown. If it is saying Speightstown, that means the person was ending duty and they're supposed to transfer you. But as you have raised it here, we will make sure we look at that and that the policy, which is a transfer, is activated and people follow that. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, sir, we have a long list of people behind you. And unless we plan to spend till midnight in Speightstown, which I can't do with the public servants, you know that I have to ask people to expedite. And where people are coming to raise roads, water, and transport, I think we all agree that we've spent the last 2 hours dealing with roads, water, and transport. And if it relates to a district that you have not heard, then I will ask Mr. Morris to have someone over there take the specific road that you have not heard called so that we can manage everybody who wants to speak. But I'm not going to take any further considerations on the traditional issues that have been raised of roads, water, and transport because we accept that there is much work to be done and we have done a hell of a lot, but we will continue to do to meet the needs of the people.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Prime Minister. First, I was told to express great humbleness on your service, your excellent service to the country. But my
thank
issue
you, but I would love to know your name so I can say thank you.
My name is Robert Beckles.
Robert
Beckles.
So I can say thank you, Mr. Beckles.
You're welcome, man.
And where are you from, sir?
I'm from Batalis, right above Royal Naval School. But I know that you was raised around the Queen Street area, and my concern is that there is a road between Jordan Supermarket and Peace of My Dot, which I understand is the public access to the beach. Within the last 3 weeks, there have been some boulders put in that access road, and as you know, people come from all over Barbados to visit that beach. You've been there, I've seen you there before. So I'm saying, I think this would be the easiest thing for you to rectify this evening because as the Prime Minister, you say move that, you gotta move, right?
The only problem if I say move that, I hope that the Attorney General got the money with Brian Strawn to pay because to the best of my knowledge, half that road in the sea now too.
Yeah, but
so that for me to tell MTW to move those boulders on a road that, in fact, when I went down probably 18 months ago, it was bad.
You was down there, yeah.
I'm told that it is far worse than it was, and not only have the cannons gone in some of the water on the top part, on the southern part close to Schooner Bay, but the part closer to Jordan, that the road really has eroded to the point where to allow cars to go down there would be an act of great recklessness.
Yeah, well, a lot of vehicles have refrained from going down there, but I'm talking about people going to the beach, walkers, especially on the morning, and
but people, you can't get past the walk.
Yeah, you can get past the walk, but I'm talking about the road itself. They have boulders.
Right, but what we don't want, from what I understand, and MTW is here and Senior Minister Duguid is who briefed me on it, is that you don't want cars passing on that road.
Yeah, we understand
because
that.
Even when I went 18 months ago, quite frankly, it was already bad.
Yeah, madam, we're not talking about vehicles. We're talking about walkers, especially in the morning, like beach goers and that kind of stuff, that they should have access. They should have access to that
So
beautiful
people,
beach.
So people can't walk past?
You know, you got to step over. You got old people stepping over boulders and all that kind of stuff.
No,
Eh?
hold on. We don't need the boulders right up underneath each other. I'm just asking, is there a pathway, 12-inch, 18-inch pathway between the boulders?
Everything's right across the, all right across
No
the road.
problem. I let them go tomorrow and look at it and see how they can create the opportunity for people to walk through.
Yes.
But what we don't want people doing at this point in time is walking until we do the coastal revetment and protection and possibly even a boardwalk to make sure that people in future can use the boardwalk to get to the beach there by Schooners Bay. Because in any event, you couldn't enter the sea until you got to the Schooners Bay end because of the way how it is off the ocean. Okay?
Point taken.
So we'll get that done for you tomorrow, Mr. Beckles.
Mr. Beckles. I think that would be an easy task for you. Correct?
Easier than the first one I thought you were asking.
You know, because I remember when Onafa told the people at Sandy Lane, move them boulders, the boulders move. So I hope that you could go and tell them people move them boulders.
We move the boulders for a pathway, not a driveway. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Good night, Madam Prime Minister. Head table. My name is Colin Anaby. I'm the president of the Black Base Wash Bay and Social Club. This evening I want to speak about the pavilion and the resource center in Black Base. A couple of years ago, the pavilion was damaged by Hurricane Elsa, the roofing. To this day, it has not been repaired. The pavilion itself and resource center has been condemned for repairs now for the last 2 or so years, and nothing has been done on the pavilion at present. So,
part of the difficulty, sir, is going to be looked at. But our major priority coming out of ELSA has been what? Dealing with people who lost their houses or whose houses have to be repaired. And we are well on the way to finishing it, but there's a hard core of persons who, because they cannot find somewhere to move to, we've not been able to finish that core of persons. Once that is finished, and I believe that Minister Jordan, you want to speak? You've spoken to the Minister of Community Development already. You want to speak?
After quite a number of approaches, some work was started, but apparently only a few of the permaclad sheets were taken off, put down, and nothing has happened since then. I've spoken to the minister up until Friday last week, not today, it was Friday last week, and he has again promised to get his officers, because there was a point in time when they were saying to him that work has started, but no work has started. And something was done only, I say something because it was just removing a few sheets, and that was only last week or week before. But immediately, work seemed to have stopped again. So I've been bending his ear to make sure that whatever work is started is completed, because like you said, it's affecting not just the pavilion, but also affecting the resource center on the lower level. And we have not had any activity in the resource center for longer than those 2 years. The pavilion is 2 years, but it's been much longer, might have been 5 or 6 probably, for the resource center underneath. And it is impacting Black Bess because Black Bess is not as connected to other areas as some other districts.
Thank you. And what I will say, as I said, is that a lot of our fiscal space has been taken up initially in the repairs, but we're getting to the point where most of those are behind us now, which will allow us to deal with some other public infrastructure that was affected by this freak storm and Elsa.
Yeah, thank you. And secondly, the lighting, especially in Black Bess. We have a bridge from the main road in Black Bess that leads over into Mangrove Tenantry. That is very, very dark at night. That bridge was also damaged a couple of years ago when a truck had run off the road and damaged the bridge. So that bridge also needs repairing as well. And I generate even Highway 2A. I find Highway 2A from Black Base Corner to Mile Quarter is very dark at night, and they have about 3 or 4 bridges on that same road where you cannot, it's hard to pick up the bridge at night.
I got you completely, and I'll ask once again, Ms. Bennett, Cheryl, the lighting issues on Highway 2A and the other areas pointed out by Mr. Allenby, if we can follow up on them, please. Lighting shouldn't be a major problem for us to resolve for them once we have access to the lights. Okay?
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
And no, all of the areas, just take the list, please. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks.
Who's next?
Good night, Mr. Prime Minister, your cabinet. Good night, everybody. My concern tonight is...
What's the name, sir?
Gladstone Scantlebury. My concern tonight is I live on a plot of land right opposite here. Mr. Biercom has just purchased a piece of land which is directly behind my property. Our property is to take us as a family lot. Now, I have family members who've been living there for over centuries. The last person that I know died at 92 when I was a little boy growing up. And that's way gone. I'm almost 60 now. Now, we always had access going to the beach. There's supposed to be a 6-foot path leading from Queen Street Road straight down to the beach even before it was the Arms House. Now, that road is passable from the main road down. Mr. Biercom has now purchased the processor land, so he has erected a fence right off of Schooners Bay, straight to his additional property, which now blocks the path that is supposed to be the main path going down to the beach. If I want to go to the beach now, which I can step in and just have a rock and probably get into the sea.
You said the right of way was there all the years.
All of these years.
So let us agree that, Colin, you will go and meet with them, bring Mr. Biercom on the thing, and you all have a discussion on it. If it can't be resolved amicably, then the government will have to do what it has to do.
Thank you very much,
Thank you, and make sure the right of way is there. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All the best. Mr. Scantlebury, where you gone? You gone? Just tell him that we'll try and do it by early next week, Colin, by weekend or early next week? By early next week. Tell him that by early next week, we'll try and have the meeting and the site visit. Thank you. You too, sir.
Good evening, Madam Prime Minister and all members of Parliament and the good residents of St. Peter and the citizens of Barbados. This evening, I'd like to speak about the environmental protection.
Once you tell us your name.
Shakeem Howell, Madam Prime Minister.
And from where?
Mainers in St. Peter.
Thank you.
I would like to discuss this afternoon the environmental protection of the land at the end of Sand Street, where there is the fixture of a turtle crossing. And we do know that as the government makes a commitment to climate change and the Roofs to Reefs project, that the turtles crossing and that immediate environment need to be protected. Currently, the land is up for sale, and the recent construction activity within the immediate environment with the reopening of BIA and the construction across the road for more tourism development projects has shifted how the turtles come up. And as such, is impacting them in a negative light. So I'm asking the government to intervene.
What's BIA?
The restaurant. Built the four Hugos.
The former Hugos?
Yeah, the former Hugos.
Okay. All right, talk. Okay.
Yes, please. So the land at the end of Sand Street is where I'm discussing, where there's no bar-like structure there. And the turtles have now started coming up on that side and they're crossing there. There's already a permanent turtle crossing. But currently that land is up for sale. So I'm trying to ask if we can have an environmental protection of that land and have similar structures, similar how we have Folkestone, to ensure that the turtles are protected and there's also a green and safe space, not just for the youth in the immediate environs of Speightstown, but to make sure that they're able to have a place that is safe for everyone. And that's my biggest concern in terms of that land not being for sale there.
Yeah, I don't know that we can commit to that, because if it is the land that I think it is, in the scheme of things, it might not be affordable for us to do it. So I will try to find out what's happening, and government doesn't only, and this is a lesson for all of us, government doesn't only carry out its public purpose through tax and spend. That's why we have regulations, that's why we have legislation, that's why we have facilitation, that's why we have empowerment. So let us agree that we will look at it, examine the issue. The government has been working with those people who want to preserve turtles. And it is, I mean, I do it a lot of the time. You know how much turtles I've taken back down to the water in my time? So that is a given. But I'll ask Colin to investigate it and report back to us.
Thank you very much, Madam PM. And the other concern is about 7 years now since the Whitehall Playing Field Pavilion was promised to be upgraded to a multi-purpose community complex and youth space. And is at this stage, right, the pavilion right opposite.
Slow down, Skipper.
Sorry,
you're talking 100
just
miles
across
per
from
hour.
Trademark,
Like most young people, you're talking 100 miles per hour. Just slow down a little bit.
No problem. The pavilion just across the road from Trademark there in Malina Quarter. I just would like to find out when we'll be able to have that pavilion upgraded to a multi-purpose complex for community purposes and for the youth in particular. If this is completely facilitated, it will impact the youth of Ashton Hall, Mount Breverton, Malina Quarter, Maynards, and Whitehall in particular, which is about 750
So,
young
Mr.
people.
Hall, you sound like a man who is busy. And you sound like a man who is more than prepared to help lift weight. And therefore, if you are such a man, then I would like to suggest that in some of these instances, and I'm not fooling you, across this country, people are going to have to engage in levels of self-help as well and fundraising. And it may well be that you can reach an arrangement with the National Sports Council for them to help supply some of the materials, but that you also in the community get people willing to do the old-time thing called volunteerism, and to be able to make sure that when men finish working, Mr. Riley, on a day, that there's a pot of food and different things that they can engage, and everybody reflects on the fact that they are working in a common purpose to do something that belongs to them. Because if we wait for government to do everything, then a number of communities will not benefit up front. I'm being straight. So I want us to apply our hearts to wisdom. There are many other projects across this country where there were levels of self-help. And if it is that you all come up with a clear plan with the National Sports Council and the sporting group or the community groups that use that center, then we can work to see how we can make available, Mr. Member of Parliament, some of the materials or a lot of the materials, and some of the things you can fundraise, and you can also get people to commit what? Time.
Understood.
Is that a deal?
Yes, please.
And I said
just want to
that
ask
when we
one
were
more
in
favor,
St.
Prime Minister.
James
Thanks for
too,
the advice.
on some of the other projects, so I'm not picking on the people of St. Peter. I've had to say it in other parts of the country, because imagine that in every parish and in every constituency, everybody wants the same thing. And there is a limit, because at the same time, we wanted to increase welfare rates as we did that had not been increased in this country for God knows how long. And welfare rates have now been increased by 40%, at the same time as broadening the basis of entitlement for it, for who could benefit in the middle of COVID especially. At the same time, the Barbados Water Authority deliberately did not cut off anybody's water during COVID, to the point where its receivables over 2.5 years rose to near $100 million. I am saying to us, from the bottom of my heart, that we have to look at what is essential, what is highly desirable, and what is optional. And some of the things that are optional or highly desirable may require collaborative partnerships. And especially on this coast, where a number of you have already shown success in partnering with civil society and philanthropic organizations in particular, that you may have to help us carry some of the weight so that I can spend the time fixing the water mains and the service lines into Boscobel and into parts of St. Lucie, or ensuring that we can continue to support the welfare where people are not likely to receive support elsewhere, or as Mr. Beckles raised, coastal defense work, the revetments and those kinds of things. Very few people are going to do that on their own. The government has to do the heavy, heavy, heavy lifting. But with all sincerity, if we made the materials available to you to fix a pavilion or to build a pavilion, you should be able to do it. Not true, brethren? You could do it? Little fella back there so he can help you.
I know that my people are very
willing. And I'm not talking now to the people of St. Peter alone. I'm talking to the people of Barbados, that there are going to be some projects that ought to be best done at a community level if we want to see quick progress.
Understood, Prime Minister. I just want to ask one favor. Thanks very much for the advice. Can you just commit to pledging 300 so we could start up and we'll be able to go from there? Thank you.
My brother, come back. No, you don't get way, so come back. I can really tell that you don't know how hard it is to collect $300,000 in taxes.
No, I mean the $300.
Oh, $300. Oh, you want me to help Colin Jordan?
Yes, please.
Oh, so if Colin is the MP, tell me what he
approach.
should start with if you want me to come from Bridgetown.
He's already
with 300.
He's already at 500, Madam Prime Minister.
You're very generous to him. I thought you were going to put him at 1,000. Thank you very much.
Good
Yes,
evening.
ma'am.
Good evening, Madam Prime Minister and head table, brothers and sisters. I'm Sandy Field Kelman from Sweet Home Gardens, St. Peter. I'm an import down here, though. I just want to, I was going to speak
I
on...
thought so. I know you from elsewhere.
You know me from St. George.
Exactly.
Yes. I was going to speak on transportation, but I just want to speak on transportation on the human element, not the buses and the times and so on. I have had some bad experiences on the buses with my children, because, you know, I'm a child's person, with mainly children who are blossoms and brownies, starting from the ages of 3. And one day we were going, not on a hike, but we were going on a scenic tour, and we awaited a bus to come to take us from Speightstown here by Sweet Home to Josie Hill. And the bus never came. So what happened, the parents were in Josie Hill for 6 o'clock, and I never got to Josie Hill for 6 o'clock because no bus never came. So I just want to let Miss Gemma know, because I know her from dealing with hikes and all of that. We go often on hikes. We go visiting old people, elderly people. And I would like to see, the parents said they're not going to be sending their kids anymore because naturally there are no buses. So from that element. The other part with the transportation, I have had 2 situations with bus drivers who I had to have serious words with that really and truly, I mean, it really hurt me to the core that big men can speak to little children from schools, and Auburn schools in particular. One afternoon, I was on the bus with children again, and he really accosted that little boy. And I asked him, please stop the bus and put me off, the children off, and the little boy off. I would like the transport system to please speak, because I called in about that to the person to let them know they have to speak to people in a little bit more pleasant manner, especially children. It's okay to drive new brand buses, but you have to have a situation where the drivers are going to engage the children and the persons on the bus. The other thing I want to speak on is, since I've moved down here to St. Peter, I have loads and tons of children who I work with in St. Lucie also, and in St. Peter Boscobel, Mount Brevotor, Mile and a Quarter, St. Clements, St. Swithins, Connelltown. And I really would like, he asked for $300, maybe $600 to help us with these children. All right? Because I have to pull my pocket to help these children, because these children, and I really want to get to the point, in that, I know I want to compliment you, Madam Prime Minister, for saying that you want to look at the deficits of children starting from third form. You need to look at deficits from 3 years old. All right, because that is the age group that I work with and I do diagnostic testing with. You cannot wait until a child is 14 and 15 years old. It has to start from the cradle. And these children in Mount Brevoort, Mile and a Quarter, etc., have a lot of deficits. And that's what I'm working with. Obviously, we are doing it free. It's 12 of us that work with these children every Saturday. It's a volunteer program, so whoever wants to come and volunteer. And I just want to find out from Minister Phillips and Minister Jordan if there's anywhere that we can meet physically on a Saturday to do this. Because right now, what we do, we meet under trees, etc., down by the same boulders by Jordan Supermarket, etc. And I really would like to have somewhere where we can take these children. So really, those are my two contributions, but I would like...
Thank you very much, Sandy.
Thank you.
Let me say that Colin says he'll check out for you, not just the Spikestown Community Center. I don't see Peter here, but if he is, Peter, right. That's because he's keeping quiet tonight. But both Peter and Colin will work with you to see what you can do to assist with the training and support services for the young children. The diagnostic testing was not intended to start at third class 3 or class 4, form 3 or form 4. In fact, one of the things that has bothered us was that the testing for hearing, speech, and sight, which was done for all 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds when I was Minister of Education, was abandoned a few years ago. And I've asked the Ministry of Education to look at reinstituting it, because a child that is not hearing properly cannot learn properly. A child that is not seeing properly cannot learn properly. But we want it across the board in the country again. And then, of course, the criterion reference tests at 7 and at 9 are intended also to be able to pick up learning deficits and gaps where they exist. So, yeah. And we are going to be working at them systematically, because like with any other diagnosis, if we don't know what the diagnosis is, we can't treat them. So thank you for that, and I continue to urge you to work with the young kids, because everyone needs a helping hand. Yes, Ian?
Before Mr. Griffith speaks, is there anyone else stay there, Mr. Griffith, holding the number? All right, join the middle section so we don't have people slipping in and then you keep falling back all the time. Remember, if you want to speak, you should really have a number and go to from the back of the line so that there is some order. Go ahead, Mr. Griffith.
Good night, Madam Prime Minister, members of the head table. This is my first time at such a forum, so I hope that you can bear with me. But as a resident of St. Peter and now a business owner in Spikestown and Half Moon Fort, I have to traverse these areas as well.
We may know you as Ian Griffith, but give your name for the
Ian
record
Griffith.
And your address.
Ian Griffith, Ashton Hall, St. Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, with regards to the Spikestown tourism development in the area and its environs, such as Six Men's, I believe that government has had plans for such developments in this area. What I speak about is how does these plans impact on the small businesses and the youth in Spikestown? How are they going to be involved in such plans for the future development of Spikestown? So far, I mean, we've seen a lot of small businesses in Spikestown not being able to survive, sometimes because of the high rents that we have to pay in Spikestown. Also, with some of the developments that we've seen, especially in the Six Men's area, the future developments that are there, how does it affect those small businesses and the residents of Six Men's? We know that the situation, the ongoing situation with the land ownership in Six Men's, and I know that there is developments for the coastal area of Six Men's. We had a meeting last week with the minister in Six Men's, a discussion with regards to some plans. My problem that I have with is that when these plans are brought about, why isn't there some sort of assessment or environmental assessment to the people of these areas and how they are going to be involved? Right now we are hearing that there's going to be a small hotel building in St. Men's, and also too with the land situation with regards to Port St. Charles. There are a number of persons in St. Men's, some of whom are here tonight, who are keep wondering whether or not they have to be moved or not. So these are the things that I think that I would like to have answered. One more thing also too with the beach erosion and the plans for the development. It is my understanding that there was some coastal proposals for developments for 6 months as far as going to far as John Moore, but since this is St. Peter talks, we're speaking of 6 months in general. How does these coastal developments, again, how is it going to impact? Because we are not really hearing much detail. We're not hearing any detail. We're just hearing snippets of what's going to happen with regards to these particular areas. So these are the questions that I would like to have answered so that at least some of the business owners, small business owners, I believe, because we see a lot of development going on in St. Men's, but in Spikestown, but we still see a lot of small businesses and the youths who are setting up there, like the kiosks and stuff there we have there above the bus stand. We are not seeing any structure, proper structure going on, and these businesses have a role to play in the tourism project in this area.
Yeah, I'm going to let Colin speak to you to a number of these areas. Things have happened, but I also want you to recognize that we are now beginning to see changes in the last 6-9 months in terms of the level of economic activity, which is why the country, you feel it picking up again. But the reality is that what we went through for 2.5 years in COVID was not just peculiar to Spikestown, it was island-wide. And therefore, that's why the government introduced business interruption benefits and did all other kinds of things to forego, including asking these people to hold a hand to people for 2.5 years. As to the specifics, last time we met in this hall, we established a Spikestown task force. It is true that the majority of time since February 2020 to February, I say in March because March is 36 hours away or less.
Correct.
But to February 2023, the majority of that time was spent consumed with what? COVID. And that's our reality. So we're now literally picking up on all fronts. And that's why I told you a number of those projects in Old Town. Ma'am, when you were asking me about the road, some of those projects would have started since 2020 and 2021. They're now starting again. So you are going to have some concerns, and obviously the Spikestown Task Force I would like to hear from. What you did get was a corrected jetty in the time that was done, but I suppose that was easier to do. Sorry?
A proposed corrected jetty.
How do you mean a proposed corrected jetty?
It still probably have to be tested, no.
But
With
to the best of my knowledge, it was corrected, so I would hate to think that it hasn't.
Well, let's see.
Minister?
With respect to, I heard Austin talking about the location. With respect to the business activity in Spikestown, the Prime Minister referred to the setting of the Spikestown Task Force, which we did in 2020, sometime around the middle of 2020. What we focused on thus far, and Minister of Tourism will be familiar with where we are at, as well as a couple of members of the committee. We found out in our early stages that IDB was conducting a living city survey. And what attracted us to this survey, I'm giving some background information, what attracted us to that project was that they were not reinventing the wheel. There have been a whole lot of studies done on Spikestown and how to revitalize and how to get business coming back and what we should be focusing on. What that study was doing was looking at everything that had already been done on Spikestown, including the physical development plan and all the other studies that were done, and also engaging with the public. So quite a number of hundreds of persons participated in that process. They have a draft output which they shared with us about 3 weeks ago. The next stage, so that draft output gives us some ideas as to how holistically we should position Speightstown. It is specific to Speightstown, not St. Peter generally, specific to Speightstown. How we should position Speightstown and what we should address as the low-hanging fruit, and then the middle stage, and then the long term. The next stage is a cabinet paper to go to cabinet. And the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Tourism, who was part of the meeting, has committed to taking to cabinet what that plan is, and then it becomes, once it's policy, once cabinet approves and it becomes policy, then it is something that we can start to share more widely as a roadmap going forward. Now, it will not address, and I think I sense from you not sense, you spoke to rents. So you're getting into granular in terms of what a landlord is charging to a tenant. That is not something that can be addressed by a committee. That is something where one has to maybe use moral suasion to attempt to convince somebody whether it is better to, what we say, sheep head a day rather than a cow head a year kind of thing.
Let me help you though, Colin. Because, no, he's correct on that.
It's true.
We can't tell people.
Can't tell her, yeah, it's true.
You own a business, and nobody can tell you how to run that business in terms of some of the things that you have to do. But what I want to hear, and that's why I'm anxious to see the outcome of the Speightstown Task Force report. There are buildings in Speightstown or spaces in Speightstown that we as a government might have to take over. And that's why I wasn't being invidious when I told Mr. Howell about the cost of the land with the turtles, because our first priority has now to be to see how we can create opportunities and spaces for small business people to coexist with other people in Speightstown. And that's what we've come to do. In fairness, as I said, we lost 2.5, almost 3 years. We now have to look and see what buildings are available and what opportunities may be available for us to create that kind of business environment for the smaller persons. And then we, as a state, can more control then the rent and the prices that people will pay in order to carry out their businesses in the Speightstown. What we don't ever want to happen is the exclusion of people whose navel string buried in Speightstown too.
Thank you.
And that is what we are committed to working with. And I've made the point as well that in a lot of the major projects that we are approving, we use the concept also of planning gains in order to ensure that people will have access to things not only on government's pay, but companies are being told, for example, whenever beaches gets going, there are obligations for them to build a slipway and to do other things in there and to contribute to our urban transformation fund in Speightstown. We have one in Bridgetown that was established, that's being established, with respect to the payments that will come from the Hyatt and other hotels going in town, because you can't expect people who live around these developments not to see their quality of life and their living also elevated at the same time as we're doing these major projects. Okay? So continue, sir.
With respect to 6 Men's Land, you mentioned a couple of things. I'll come back to the tourism development. With respect to the 6 Men's Land, I'm repeating myself to you, but there are others here who would not have heard what I shared with you. We've had from about 1974 a situation where the tenure, the ownership of persons who have been living on land for generations has not been established. And as I indicated when we met at Brady's, the information we have is that the court has stated that government has acquired the land. The justice who did it asked the two parties to go away and agree a sum. that sum, the attempt to agree on a sum has now been outstanding for probably about maybe 20 years, quite a long time. And we have tried, and I indicated when it was in 6 months, we have tried continually, since we came into office in 2018, continually to engage with a view of, sorry? Yeah, we've been having discussions, without prejudice discussions, that's the legal term, with the party in an attempt to reach a settlement, a solution, that will allow us then to be able to regularize the residents who have been occupying the land for generations. So that is a process that we have started and is ongoing. We have not stopped trying to get that issue sorted out, because we recognize that persons who are living on land and have no title then have challenges going to the bank and doing all kinds of stuff. What we did do is that we made an amendment, because there were persons living there who could not get water connections because water connection is tied to title, and it can hinder you from selling your land. We made an amendment to, I'm not sure if it was a law or regulation, that allowed persons in 6 months, those who were not connected, to be able to connect to the water supply. We did that because we recognized the challenge of the residents of 6 months. And that was something that was within our purview. With respect to being able to deal with the allocating land, that matter has been in court for a couple of decades and remains in court. But we, without prejudice, are in discussions and have been in discussions for the last, this is now 4 plus almost 5 years, trying to get that matter resolved. In terms of the tourism development, well, I think I fully ventilated that. The acquisition related to, and if Minister Duguid is, Senior Minister Duguid is here, Minister Sutherland, I didn't see Mr. Sutherland over there. The road that exists around what we call Nikki Beach is going to be set a little further to the east. Just that piece of road that connects then to the water course. You know the water course before you get to the stalls.
Yeah, so the stalls.
Right. The road is going to be set a little further to the east, just a few meters to the east, and will connect to the existing St. Mains Village Road. Now, that caused some difficulty, as you would remember. When I said St. Mains Village, there were persons who thought I meant the whole of St. Mains.
Yeah.
St. Mains Village, for people who are from St. Mains, is the road that goes from the roundabout by the watercourse straight going east, right? So it will connect to that road. So from the bridge coming over the inlet at Port Ferdinand to that road that runs up into the village. It does not affect the road by the stalls, by Brady's, by the boat building, by Judge Gap.
Coastal road.
It does not affect the coastal road. I had the meeting because I realized that person's thought.
Just for clarity, St. Mains Village, the road going to St. Mains Village, we have a left side of the road and we have a right side of the road, which is the right side of the road going up the village is part of, you have next door to Port Ferdinand. Is that right side of the road property owned entirely by Port Ferdinand?
There are persons who, at some point, there are persons who live on the right side of the road. So colored, and there are a whole number of people who live on the right side of the road, but then behind those persons.
But those properties, that land, which I believe, just for clarity, was purchased from the same Brooms family in terms of the development, for Port Ferdinand? Or that's a different, that was not part of the...
That's nothing to do with us.
That's not...
You're talking about something that happened before?
No, I'm talking about when you're going up St. Mains Village, on the right side of the road. If those properties, those houses that were there for all these years, were they also a part of the same St. Mains plantation?
Not that I'm aware of. as far as I know, Port Ferdinand has fenced in their land.
So you see, because there's general thinking or thought that some of those lands, which is next door to Port Ferdinand, has been taken over by Port Ferdinand from a sale, which then, if any expansion or future expansion of Port Ferdinand, those homes might have to be moved. That is what has been
Nothing that I'm aware of.
I have learned in this country that conversations can go on things that have not been verifiable. And I don't know one way or the other what you're speaking about in terms of who owns land or whatever. But I do know that there's an easy way to find out. And I do know that the Member of Parliament, along with the Lands and Surveys Department and Senior Minister Duguid, can go and meet with the residents and confirm what is the situation. And I want to say to Mr. Beckles, if he's listening or anybody can carry a message to him, that he's absolutely correct. Senior Minister Duguid just got somebody to send him a picture, and how the road, Mr. Tudor and Ms. Bennett Innes, has been blocked off is totally unacceptable, because you literally cannot put and throw down boulders like if you just empty out a waste paper basket or a bulldozer and drop the things in the middle of the road. And he's absolutely correct that nobody can pass unless they're prepared to climb over the rocks or the boulders. Obviously, the middle part, you can't climb at all because the boulders go high, but the boulders and the rocks go from edge to edge, which is unacceptable. So, Senior Minister has already spoken to her officials, Deputy Prime Minister, sorry, has already spoken to her officials, and we hope that within a day or two, tomorrow please, that we can create a pathway for those people who just want to use the beach. Okay? And on this other matter, Colin, can you and Ian and whoever interested parties meet with the residents of Six Men's Village just to make sure that all is
Madam
well
Prime
done.
Minister, this has been going on for quite a long time.
No, I can't.
This has been 20 years now.
No. The different issues, Ian. Don't get tired. Don't get confused, my brother. So, I don't know nothing about the dead, and I can tell you about the living. You understand? Bottom line, people only laughing because Mr. Griffith is an undertaker. So, he knows about certain things that I will never know about until I experience them.
But you see, I have to.
But what I will say
every day.
No,
so
but what I will
feedback
say
is coming on the ground all the time.
Yeah, but
where are we?
it's two different issues. The bigger issue of the squatting and the regularization of services for people on that land has been caught up in a court case for almost 30 years. That is what Colin was speaking about when he said that the judge gave instructions to try and reach an agreement on the quantum. I have had different people, different ministers, as recent as when last week or week before, meeting to try to resolve these matters on a without prejudice basis. Having said that, that's one thing. What I'm asking him to meet with you on is your question as to who owns land in the village, whether it is Six Men's Plantation, Port Ferdinand, and what is happening with the road shifting to the east and all of that. I want him, Senior Minister, and the Lands and Surveys, Mr. McCollin, to go down there and meet with you and whoever else in the village and have the conversation on the ground. Because when we talk in a school hall, some people will get it and envision it, and some will not. And I prefer the site visit to take place, just as I've asked him to meet with Mr. Scantlebury, it was, on the right-of-way to the beach there by Fort Denmark as well.
One final thing is regards to the coastal development. We were told sometime before that we were looking at having break walls, because you know there's a lot of erosion coming on from that same coastal road, where residents again sometimes have to deal with, in bad weather, water coming across the road. So for quite a while now, I know that I have knowledge that Coastal had made some proposals to have break walls along the coast to protect the waves, stop the waves from coming, to protect the thing. But how soon will that be put in
Can't
place?
tell you
at any
soonness,
point in
but
time?
what I can tell you is that as recent as last week, when it was I met with you, Friday or Wednesday? Last week we met and we agreed that part and parcel of what has been happening on the West Coast is that some private people have been doing their own coastal defenses. The government has looked in some parts. I've said, look, we need a comprehensive plan for the entire West Coast to see what is it that needs to be done. And I think people forget that people talk about climate now, but in fairness, coastal has been doing this work, Mr. Rowe, since the 1980s, when Coastal Zone Management Unit was established in 1983. So that luckily for Barbados, and I see Liz Thompson in the audience, as minister, she also would have been responsible for settling a number of the IDB loans that were dedicated to coastal protection. The truth is that this bill would break us. This and water would break us as a country. And I didn't even get to roads and the other things yet that we inherited. But the reality is that because so much of Barbados's economy and pattern of housing is coastal, we do not have a choice. And therefore, what I'm hoping is that by having a holistic approach as to the planning and working with those private properties and the public spaces, that we can, over the course of the next few years, deal with the fact that there has been significant erosion on the West Coast. There has been significant loss of coral reefs on the West Coast, and the loss of the coral reefs have exacerbated the erosion. And the one that worries me the most is the extent to which those coastal waters and salt waters will enter the aquifers, a number of which are in coastal areas in St. James and St. Peter and St. Lucie, and increase the salinity of the groundwater, because I'm told by this gentleman, this team of gentlemen and lady to my left, that once those aquifers become saline, Mr. Leslie, what happens to them? We lose use of it. So what we are literally doing, and that's why I keep saying that we are in a race against time on so many issues. And one of the reasons why I value this Parish Speaks is that it allows us to talk with you and ordinary people in a way that you understand that the scale of the problems facing this nation are tremendous, but we can make it, but it does mean prioritizing. So when I say to Mr. Howell just now about the community center in Whitehall, I don't tell him to help go and fix that because I just feel like telling him that. But because I know from where I sit, both as chair of cabinet and as Minister of Finance, that the scale of the works that Santia's ministry has to do in public works and water and roads, and that the scale of the work that the others with the blue economy and with the green economy and the environmental protection on land that we're doing is such that we cannot easily do everything all at once. So
yeah, maybe we should ask some of those private investors who, for example, have done their own brick walls to actually sometimes maybe extend beyond to their neighbors and have some assistance from them.
That's already being done in many instances. And that's why I say that people make assumptions without necessarily having all the facts. And what I'm trying to encourage all of the public officials and ministers to do is to speak and let people know the facts. Because there are also instances, for example,
knowing the facts,
where people may want to be able to do developments. And we've said, look, if you want to do this, this is the planning gain you're going to have to undertake. So in some instances, we will impose it on them. And in some instances, obviously, they come voluntarily to do it. But I thank you for raising these issues, because this is what pays our bills in large measure. And I keep making the point. And we have to balance that, because the loss of jobs, if this falls, tourism on the West Coast falls, the loss of jobs we found out in 2020 will be considerable. The loss of markets for farmers with both chicken and pork and vegetables is considerable. The loss of opportunity for people in transport and sea-based sports will be considerable. So that we have a responsibility to build out the enterprises that we have a level of expertise on. And when all is said and done, Barbados still has one of the highest, if not the highest, repeat rate, visitor satisfaction rate in the region. We have to continue to build on it. And it means Bajans making the place fully a place that is hospitable and from which workers and all stakeholders can benefit even as we carry out what we want to do in tourism. So I thank you.
Thank you, Madam Prime Minister.
And,
Thank you, Mr. Jordan.
I ask householders also, particularly those on the coast, to work with us to see how best we can help you and you can help us in this fight, particularly to protect the aquifers that are coastal. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
The other speakers left. Three other questions. But before the next speaker...
It is 10 o'clock, but we'll take them very quickly and hear all three and then answer all three at the end.
Okay, before the next speaker though, the driver of H2343 and MB, Mike Bravo 2542, would you kindly shift your vehicles temporarily if you're not ready to leave? Thanks.
Good evening, Madam Prime Minister, and to the panel. My name is Tishani Foster. I just have a couple of considerations. Tishani.
Where are you from?
I'm from Statesman. My first consideration would be to ask if the building codes could be improved or upgraded, that we could have, as opposed to individual homes, if we could have condominiums that would help alleviate the housing crisis. So similar to how you would have the whole project, where the panels will go on top of the individual houses, if you could have like a section where you could put the panels and then you have more space to put the condominiums and then also do like parks or recreational areas to make it more of a community.
Actually, I think Senior Minister Duguid is here and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but the quads that we're building and the ones that are looking to go higher than the quads, you want to speak, William, will have to have separate photovoltaic panels. So you're already thinking in the right direction.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. What we've done by having what we call quads, which are 4 units in one building, it means that the lower people don't have access to a roof. So we put the photovoltaic panels on the roof of the top 2, and then the others that would require those are put on driveways. So in other words, you get covered car parks, but they're covered with photovoltaic. So that gives the opportunity then, like as you said, the whole project, to be able that people can benefit from having the photovoltaic systems on the parking areas. And that's how we've designed them. So
Maybe if you can build them more than 2 floors, that's what I'm suggesting.
Right.
High rise.
So yes, so you want to go higher.
High
Yeah,
rise.
I understand that. And so there are several types of rises that you can do. You can do a low rise, a mid rise, and a high rise. But all of it has a cost of implementation, but it still requires also the parking, but it's a bit of both. And what we found is housing solutions, and really the Minister of Housing should also be answering, but it is also a mix of solutions. So there's not a one type fits all, and that is why we're doing a mix of solutions. Some are quads, some are duplexes, which is 2 houses on 1 plot. Some are hexplexes, which is what you call the higher, and then some go even higher, like how we have in Valerie and Grotto. So there are mixes, and that's exactly how we do it, based on the location, access to land, and the number of factors.
Okay. Yeah. My other consideration will be to the NIS reform. I was wondering if the reform could include for contributors, if it would be if you could have like access to funding for similar housing. I just did a study out of Grenada where their NIS reform, they offer loans to the contributors for housing. So I was wondering if that could be implemented into Barbados.
That is something that I will share with the NIS board. We have gone through a process of taking input from stakeholders generally on revitalizing the national insurance scheme. What you're speaking to is part of that, but you're also talking about the investment strategy, investment policy. So investing basically in contributors.
Precisely.
So that hasn't been refined yet, and I will take it to the board so that they can consider that. Because the investment policy is one of the matters that came out very strongly. Barbadians generally were not convinced that our investment strategy was right. Now, I'm not an expert in that area, so I'll add that to the considerations that the board will look at in deciding what the investment policy will be as we go forward.
I could also structure it similar to how you do like cash surrender values and insurance policies.
Right.
So you could tie it also to the pensions.
Right, and you said that there's a comparison to what's happening in Grenada?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I can have them to look at that as well.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much.
My other consideration would be to have, if we could have a national exercise program to alleviate the non-communicable diseases that we currently face as a nation. I believe that as a nation, we go to work from 8 until 5 o'clock, and if we have to get in our exercise, it has to be before we go to work or after we come home on the evenings. We are generally tired, but if we could have like flexible hours where you could incorporate exercise into the programs, and also when you are refurbishing the roads, if we can also have the sidewalks done, that we can have more walking or more exercise programs into a national policy and not necessarily only for government as well. And my final consideration would be to the recruitment of university graduates. I have noted that when you have what you would call the job fairs at the university, they're primarily from private sector entities. Government does fund the university, and I believe that the government should be more competitive in getting, in recruiting the university graduates so that you can have the best of the best, similar to how the SOEs are going after the best of the best, that consideration is also there. Thank you.
Thank you, Tashani. I think are you making a plug for yourself as well?
Definitely.
Yeah, exactly. But to your latter point, I do agree. We have to look wider in terms of recruitment, and obviously if we're not careful, we're going to end up finding that people are going to look outside of the public service. So, I mean, we do have some exceptional people already in the public service, but it will definitely be a benefit if we can tie it into what we're doing at the University of the West Indies. In relation to your other point, the chronic non-communicable diseases, that is a big issue for government. I know the Ministry of Health has been doing a lot of work in terms of getting people more active. We have also looked at the flexible hours. COVID pretty much changed a lot of how we viewed the workplace environment and how we just generally viewed work. And I think that some of the lessons that have been learned from that period definitely need to be applied within the workplace. You mentioned the roads and making sure that we have the decent sidewalks. Well, as PM said earlier, in part of the redesign of the roads going forward has to be a situation where we don't do things as usual, and therefore the climate change issues have forced us into a position where we have new standards to be able to not only build better roads, but also to look at things where we can encourage active lifestyles as well. And also, Colin is reminding me that we've started to introduce community gyms. I've benefited from one in the Haggett Hall area. There's also one in Indian Ground, I am told. I think they started with about 5, and in the next financial year, they're going to roll out a couple more across Barbados as well. But it's really community gyms within the community to allow persons to be able to use those facilities in an open space as well. Last person.
Good evening, Prime Minister. Good evening, members of the Cabinet. My name is Joan Leacock, and I've been living in Barbados for the 22 years. The Leacocks have been resident in Church Street, Speightstown for over a century, and I'm a proud legacy owner of that fact. Now, the only matriarch left for my family is Sybil Leacock, who is actually currently in a home. My mother was killed in our house last year. But my question and my query is, more than anything else, is about insurance policies. And this is something that affects me personally, but also I think it affects everybody here, as well as the wider public. Now, since being in Barbados for 22 years, and by the way, I love living here, but I'm seriously thinking about going back to the UK. Since living in Barbados and I came over, my mother and father were running a small shop which belonged to the Leacock family, which my Uncle Mort had been running for 40 years previously, and my mum ran it for another 40 years. I insisted, taken on your notes, but before then, I insisted my parents should be insured because it's a shop, public liability, theft, fire, burglary, all those issues could have happened to them any time. Luckily, they were insured when we did have a fire, and therefore things were put back into place. My father subsequently died, and then what I've been doing is paying insurance for my mother up until her death last year. So, paying insurance every month without fail. But let me just take you back a bit, because I had a policy with British American, and they were part of CLECO. Paying that as a good citizen, doing my due diligence, had to have an operation, suddenly being told, sorry, policy's null and void because there are issues. So consequently, I was left blinded, had to find the money, do it myself. Years later, and this affects a lot of other people as well, years later, money came. They decided to pay up whatever the policy was, and so I got my money a good 7 years later. A lot of people have died waiting for their money. On the top of that, I said, moving forward now, I've been paying for my mother to be insured, left, right, and center, public liability, personal injuries, theft, fire, but I did it through a broker because I felt I don't understand the legalities of insurance. I wouldn't begin to say that I have all the answers. So let me do it through a broker who would make sure that everything is fitting to my mother. Now, a lot of people returning to Barbados from the UK, Canada, America, especially when they've retired, the first thing they do is open up a small shop because it's easy to manage, and also usually it's attached to their house. Same thing applied to my mother. So consequently now, her life was taken. So I'm thinking I'm paying all risks, fully comprehensive insurance, putting money out every single month. It's covered. Not that I'm rushing to get paid for my mother's death. I'm just saying I'm covering all the bases. Only to be told by the insurance company, which didn't tell me, they told the broker, and the broker passed on the letter, saying, your mother's over 65, so anybody under the age of 60 and over 65 is not covered by this policy. My shock was the broker came to the house on more than one occasion, knew my mother was living there because I don't live at my mother's house. When you fill in an insurance policy, you fill in with your name, your age, your date of birth. All that was done. I'm not stupid. But what I didn't do was keep the policy document. Because in the past, I've had no problems. The fire, crashing into the gate of my mother's business, everything was sorted out. But personal injuries, which covers life-threatening situation, burglary, theft. All that happened on July of last year. And the insurance company is saying to me, she's over 65, it's not covered. You knew, the broker knew, she was over 65. I'm not living at the house. So consequently, I'm now left with a policy I've been paying to cover my parents for years and no restitution. That is not right.
I'm going to ask the Attorney General to speak to you after the meeting, because I think that some of the things that he may have to say is better said directly. But generally, I think that this is one of the areas that we have to be able to exercise greater control.
Yeah.
And I have the senior minister isn't here anymore, who was previously in charge of commerce. But one of the things that I've asked for is the passage of an Unfair Contract Terms Act.
Yeah. I think
to remove the disequilibrium or the lack of symmetry between those who have power and those who don't have power as an individual, whether it is with an insurance company, a bank, or any other powerful institution that really can outweight you in the law courts, for want of a better phrase. So the Unfair Contract Terms Act is absolutely critical, and I hope, as I said, that the line Ministry of Commerce, along with the AG's office, can put us in a position to have that within the next year. It is not straightforward because we have a shortage of draftsmen, not just in Barbados, but in the entire region. And therefore, that's why it is taking longer, obviously. In fact, the draftsmen are really working beyond the call of duty in this country. But we're trying to see whether we can find others outside of Barbados to hire to supplement the work that we're doing here. The personal level, would you be so kind? Because I really tried to make sure that persons, when it deals with personal matters, that we can deal with them for you individually without us having to treat to all of your business in public.
I agree, but I think also it applies to everybody
But
else.
I realized that's why I let you continue.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I needed to answer and to let you and the country know that we do need an Unfair Contract Terms Act in Barbados. It's long overdue in my view, and it is really to address the lack of symmetry, the lack of power in relations, or as the Bible would tell you, the fact that you're unequally yoked.
Yes. Just to add a very quick point, Prime Minister, basically when taking this document to a lawyer just for advice, because it's somebody I know, and he said, this was not fit for purpose. Therefore, you have a case. And he said, you having a case, you could blow the insurance companies out of the water here because you employed a broker to work on your behalf. And he failed to do that comprehensively.
Well, they will all tell you about the different duties of care and everything, and I'm sure that the AG will speak to you specifically, but he can't practice private law, so you will still end up back having to have a lawyer.
Absolutely. But I'm a lawyer from before anyway.
But you're absolutely correct that you can't, people have to have a level playing field and fairness when people are representing and offering to sell goods or services to them. Okay?
So I'm just grateful for you being here tonight.
No, thank you for sharing, and I'm so sorry to hear about your mum.
Yeah.
And as I said, AG, you'll continue.
Thank you
very much, Ms. Leacock. I think, Roy, that's the end. There's nobody else? Okay. I'd like to thank all of you who came out again. The night has gotten considerably cooler since the shower, but it is always a pleasure to be in Speightstown. And as you've heard, we will continue to work with the residents of St. Peter on a range of matters. And it is a work in progress on many fronts. The lack of access to water, roads, and transport continue to bedevil the north, and it is something that the government is singularly focused on and ensuring that we can correct. But even as we focus on it and provide the funds for it, it will take time, because in every instance it is capital projects that require planning and then execution and coordination in some instances, as was the case with the bridges, because if you take out every bridge all at once, then there's no opportunity for people to get out. So we will have to sequence some of the things that we're doing, but we ask you to bear with us and to allow us to do by you what should have been done a long time ago. Thank you for coming out, and I look forward to the next Parish Speaks in St. Thomas in March. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Roy. And thank you to the public officials at the back who came early and continue to help us improve the efficiency of this process. Thank you.